Hey, are you there?
Alrighty, let's get started. How y'all doing today, chat? Everybody doing well? We having a good time, chattars? Brave friends? Hope everybody's doing well. Got some cool things to do today. Let's get started. Hold on, let me get the door. Need to close door. Chair stream. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder that although I'm a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything is just for educational or entertainment purposes only. So if y'all have a medical concern or question, please go see a licensed professional. So super excited today. We're doing another call-in stream. And today's call-in stream is going to be about what's holding you back. So we're going to talk a lot about challenges, hear from some of the people in our community. Really looking forward to it. I'm going to do my level best to save time for some meditation towards the end, but really looking forward to it. Thank you to everyone who's participated in the call-in streams so far. The feedback that we're getting is really, really good. I think people really appreciate, this kind of stuff. So thank you very much to our community. A couple of things to run through before we hop in. One is our touch. This is the last week of our Touch Grass Challenge. For those of y'all that aren't familiar, Touch Grass is a community-run event that we're focusing on getting outside of the house and touching grass and sort of disconnecting from the internet a little bit. So it's a photo challenge where you go out, you take pictures of yourself doing stuff. You know, they can be anonymized in terms of you don't have to have your face or anything like that. And I think there have been like 7,000, 8,000 submissions. So people are out there doing things like watering a plant. Nice, right? Walk barefoot in the sand, meditating in a park with a friend. So sit on grass and write a journal entry on paper. So that's fantastic. We have all these people who are doing all this cool stuff. They're becoming healthier gamers. So huge props to everyone who is participating and getting out there and putting your life together. That's what we're really all about. So that challenge will run for one more week. It's a great opportunity to get outside of the house, do fun things. I also saw that some people are going on dates and things like that. So people are hanging out, looking at the night sky, things like that, watching a sunset. Because I think it's fine to like teach stuff, right? But at the end of the day, teaching has to be paired with some kind of practical stuff. And so it's a very popular event. This is the last week. A couple of other things to let y'all know about. So we're still doing Ask a Coach events in Social Sandbox. So these are a couple of other really, really popular events that we have on our Discord. Social Sandbox is an opportunity for y'all. It's a coach-led event that is has one of our coaches. And I think basically pretty much every coach we have, I've personally instructed, I can think of. Maybe that's not true, but so we teach our coaches communication skills in order to do their job and help our community discover things about themselves, etc. But one of the things that we're really finding is that people in our community appreciate those communication skills. So the Social Sandbox is a good opportunity for y'all to practice communication. So feel free to hop on, check it out, practice whatever communication you want to, whether it's listening, talking to people, how to strike up a conversation, how to have small talk, things like that. So check that out. I think it's one of our most popular Discord events. And really the Discord community is popping. And then Ask a Coach event is an opportunity for people who are curious about coaching and trying to figure out, okay, like, is coaching something that can help me? Y'all can hop on, talk to a coach for a little while. We understand people really enjoy that too, so you can sort of get a coach's perspective on a particular question that you've got or things like that. Before we hop into call-ins, though, there's something I want to show y'all that I think is like actually kind of hype. So someone on our Discord has been a busy bee. So as y'all know, we have a Dr. K's Guide to ADHD and Doing Stuff coming out soon, release date TBD. So that's a guide about understanding attention and especially the impact of technology on attention and breaking apart this idea of motivation and discipline and sort of how do we do stuff, right? So that's what Dr. K's official guide to ADHD and Doing Stuff is about. But this has happened a couple times where people have put together unofficial guides. So, someone who's kind enough in our community has put together an unofficial guide to studying where they've synthesized a lot of what we've talked about on stream and on YouTube videos and stuff like that and organizing it into an unofficial guide to studying. So it's also kind of based, or it seems to be inspired by our other guides. So, y'all can read the notes and how to use this kind of thing. And so there's like a student module. And so there's like, different kinds of things. We have a Zoom, something from our Zoom webinar back in 2020. And so it's different kinds of things that y'all can kind of look at. Like, so what about, okay, how do we deal with perfectionism? So they've got good, videos and things like that. So why gifted kids are actually special needs. I think that's one of our most popular YouTube videos. So about procrastination, about how do you handle too many projects at once, different types of procrastination, operationalizing, open-ended versus closed-ended problem solving, things like that. So this is super hype. So they're kind of putting together an unofficial resource for all of our different things for students. And I think it's hype. So thank you very much to the user who put this together. We really appreciate when, y'all are adding your organizing stuff and things like that. So that's something that y'all can find on Reddit, and we may sort of incorporate it into the wiki or something at some point. So huge props to people who do stuff like this and participate in the AOE healing. Yeah. So, yeah, it's really fantastic. So let me see. We're done with that. So let's go ahead and hop into the call-in stream. All right, let's go over here. Dr. K joined here. Okay. Let me just make sure that y'all can hear me. Y'all can hear yourselves. Let me turn on my cam over here. Set whoever I'm in the call with. And then let me grab, okay, Tech Teller.
Hi, testing.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's go.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Good to go?
Good to go. Got my...
Hi.
And so the topic for today is going to be what's holding you back. So let's see
Yep.
what's holding our community back. Hello, my friend.
Hello, Dr. K.
How are you, buddy?
I am doing okay. Thank you very much for giving me the chance, and thank you for everything you do. It's amazing, and it's helping me and a ton of other people.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you very much for being here because what I do requires people like you to come on. So thank you so much, man.
It's a privilege. So
Likewise. And what do you go by, my friend?
you can call me Trend, if that's okay. It's
Trent?
my username.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, Trent. So tell me, what's holding you back?
So, in short, the way I summed it up was a fear of success, in the sense of every time I seem to get close or within reach of something I really want, I seem to self sabotage in some way or another.
Okay.
In a way, maybe a more practical example that I gave earlier was, for example, if let's say in a dating context, you start dating somebody and then they seem to be okay. Then maybe I see it going somewhere, and out of nowhere, maybe I start seeing things in them that maybe I make it up, just like defects or things, red flags that aren't there or might not be there, just because I'm kind of worried of what an actual relationship might be in that sense. Or in a work context, it might be taking on a project with confidence at the beginning, and then once I kind of move forward, I start to realize that maybe I have bit a little bit more than I could chew. But I've done things successfully in the past, so it's just kind of a self-perpetuating belief maybe down the line.
Okay. So that sounds, first of all, I commend your insight into recognizing a potential pattern that you've come up with. That's not easy to do. What's your understanding of why you're afraid of success? How do you come to that conclusion?
Well, obviously, I've used a lot of your content over the past couple of years to kind of ask myself relevant questions, and that has helped me a ton in understanding a little bit why I might do certain things. In my estimation, it would be something like the fear, maybe, of responsibility that comes along with success, the fear of the hard work that goes into it. Even though that I'm not afraid of hard work per se, I'm quite a diligent worker. I wasn't very good in school. I got by, but once I moved out on my own, I kind of became more responsible as a necessity. But I do enjoy responsibility when it comes to, and I don't mind taking on other people's problems that much. It's just that when it comes to myself, I see uh, it'd be easier to stay in my comfort zone, which is I'm not very happy in some aspects, let's say.
Can you help me understand what your comfort zone is?
Okay, I can be more specific to my situation in particular, which in this case would be dating in particular.
Sweet. That would be very
I've
helpful.
So for me, I'm 28, so I'm not young, let's say, by any, I'm not one of the younger members of the audience, but I don't catastrophize as to like my life is over or this or that. It's just more like I've put off dating for a while. I moved out from my parents' house. I focused on getting a place of my own, a job. I jumped between a few jobs until I found a career I liked. So I put a lot of effort into my career, into my, I work out. I try to, meditate every once in a while. I try to stay into the whole like self-improvement loop. But when it comes to dating, I find it very difficult to take the first step because I have this perfectionism problem where if I do, let's say, do meet somebody I like, I don't know where that would lead. I'm worried about the potential kind of ramifications of getting involved with somebody. I've had relationships in the past, but that was a while back. And so it's been a gap where now I'm worried that the success in that in a potential relationship, I don't know what that would entail, for example. I'm being a little bit more vague now, but
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I think it's ordinary for. So first thing, Trent, I thank you so much for sharing everything you shared. I think it's very helpful, and I think part of the reason that we're vague sometimes is that we can articulate very well up to the barrier of our understanding.
Mm.
Right. And so like it's naturally going to be like anytime we're trying to figure something out, it's not precise. Like if we had understood everything, then we would have moved past it. So I think it's totally fine. So let me ask you a couple of questions. So actually, let me just try to let's start with a quick summary. So what I'm hearing is that you're like generally, it sounds like you're doing pretty well in life. You've put in a lot of effort you've had a couple bumps in the road, you've overcome those, you're sort of taking care of yourself physically, you're advancing professionally, you're really like working on yourself and have seen a lot of progress. I'm also
Yeah.
hearing that you can like, you don't avoid responsibility, you don't even necessarily avoid challenges or things like that. You're really able to kind of rise to the challenge and progress and grow. Is that fair?
Correct. Yes.
When it comes to dating, though, you're noticing that like as things kind of move forward, and here's where I'm a little bit confused, because earlier you kind of said like once things get started, you'll start noticing red flags that maybe aren't there, excuses to get out of a relationship. But then just
Yeah.
recently you said that you have trouble sort of starting things. Can you help me understand, where does the problem arise? At the starting, or like once things are kind of rolling?
Yeah, so you made a great point. So the way I would put it is I've had a couple of first dates here and there. I've had a couple of like interactions, whether my friend set me up or I met somebody off a dating app or something like that. Sometimes I felt pressured into catching up on that end because I feel like I'm behind my peers when it comes to the relationship aspects. So in the sense I'll like jump into the situation and then pull back when I realize that, hey, maybe, I'm not sure that this is where I want to go with this person, but I took it because it was better than nothing. So I really have a fear of like doing things because it's better than nothing, or I don't subscribe to the whole like being with somebody because I don't want to be alone. I'm very good at being alone. I'm not bored. I don't feel like I necessarily need other people, but it's definitely something that I would like to work on because my goals are definitely to have a relationship, to have maybe a family someday. So where that ends up going is that I, with somebody I really care, I would potentially really care about, my insecurities start coming up. Whereas with people that I don't care about that much, as bad as that may sound, it's a lot easier to kind of, give it a try and then pull back when, like I see something wrong or I assume there's something wrong.
Okay, can I think for a second, Trend?
Of course, please.
Okay. Can you tell me what you mean about, you said that your insecurities come up more when there's someone you're more invested in?
Hmm.
Can you help me
Yeah.
understand what kind of insecurities you're talking about?
Yeah. So specifically, probably, and I've watched a couple of your incel videos as well. Um, and I think having to explain to somebody that, I haven't been in a relationship in a while, that's something that I worry might pop up when I get more invested with somebody that I might like, actually. Um, that's one of them. Another one might be just fear of being judged for, even though like on my metric, and what doesn't help somehow reversely is my friends telling me that like, oh, you're so great, or my family telling, oh, you're so great, somebody would be lucky to have you, and I'm like, oh yeah, great, thanks for that, so why don't I have anybody? Like um it's it's very much a self-inflicted thing maybe, but it's definitely that feeling of either being not good enough on some level that I can't understand, or it's the having to explain to somebody that, hey, like I've been working on myself, but maybe that's just an excuse for why I've been alone. Maybe I've been alone for other reasons that I can't understand and that somebody else might see.
Trend, do you feel ready for a relationship?
Definitely. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because in the past, I've definitely felt not ready.
Okay.
So like I know I felt the difference between not being ready and then being ready,
Okay.
whatever that may mean. Like
So
it's a quite
let me ask you something, Trent.
yeah.
If you met the one tomorrow,
Yeah.
how would you feel?
Ecstatic.
I disagree.
Nervous, terrified probably.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Help me understand. What are you
uh,
terrified of?
of ruining it.
Very good. right? So if you're afraid of ruining it, so here's the thing. Here's what I'm hearing for you. You let me know. I mean, very good as in I'm assuming I'm right here. But so you're the judge, right? So I'm
Yeah.
going to put for something forward to you. Here's the thing. So Trend has been putting his life together. Trend has a good career, is working out. The thing that I'm really hearing from you, what you're really concerned about is that you're not, what I'm really sensing from you is that if you were to meet the one tomorrow, you're not confident that you could make it work. You're concerned
Absolutely.
that if you met the one, she would ask questions like, what, like, tell me a little bit about your dating history. And you're like, yeah, I've never really been in a long-term relationship. It's been many, many years. And then she's going to like look at you. And I'm assuming you're heterosexual for a moment. Is
Yes.
that a fair assumption?
That is a fair assumption.
So she's going to look at you and she's going to be like, oh my God, like this guy looks so great. Like he may exercise and he may have a decent career and he's got a silky smooth voice, but there must be something wrong with him because he hasn't, had a decent relationship. Do you ever does that kind of resonate with you?
Absolutely. And I think maybe that's the way I see myself in a certain way.
So tell me about that. How do you see yourself?
Exactly as you said, where, all of the above, but there must be something wrong with him because he didn't have a long-term relationship. And yeah, I might rationalize, hey, I've been working on myself, I've been doing this, I've been doing that, but that's just me and the way I think. I don't know how other people think. I completely agree with what you said earlier also of, the fear of not getting it to work because practically speaking, I don't have the experience to know like the ups and downs of relationships and how to manage them.
Okay.
So
Can,
I
can I
might run into.
can I
Yeah,
think?
go ahead.
Sorry. You're just saying so much good stuff. I don't want to lose any of it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Keep going. Sorry. If you can. If you can't, that's okay. I know I interrupted your frame of mind, but your flow.
No,
So let me ask you a couple other questions. So you said rationalize it to yourself,
yeah.
right? So like if you're rationalizing, oh, I've been working on myself, is that really the reason you've been single?
Um, well, on the spot, I can't think of like I'm sure I felt like I couldn't add much to somebody else's life before, um, whatever that may mean. I had the because also my initial relationships were very much based on kind of a negative attraction to people that maybe we were both having issues. So I was in a much let's oh no, I don't want to dramatize too much, but I was like in a darker place. I was relating to people more on a kind of a sad level, like trauma bonding, stuff like
Sure.
that.
Unhealthy
Well,
foundations of connection.
unhealthy foundations. So that didn't end up going very well because my standards were very low and probably theirs were as well. It was, I would take anybody that would like me. I was blown away the first time somebody actually liked me. So, um, so that I put that to the side for a while. After that, I ended up getting involved with a couple of people that were, they were nice people and all of that, but they just weren't for me for whatever reason. And now that I see myself as having put in the work, I'd like somebody who was also put in some amount of work, not necessarily like, they don't have to have this amazing career or this or that, but, somebody who's self-aware and somebody who's emotionally healthy-ish enough,
Okay. Beautifully said. So Trent, let's try to tease things apart a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to put forward just a couple of observations, and let's see how we can understand a couple things. So question number one. Observation number one. Oddly enough, the more invested you are in someone, the more likely you are to self-sabotage. Correct or incorrect?
Correct.
Okay. The less invested you are in someone, the more likely you are to advance the relationship. Correct or incorrect?
Correct.
How do you understand that?
I don't fear the consequences of losing it that much.
Good. Okay, so that's makes a lot of sense to me, right? So and what kind of consequence are we talking about?
regret,
What
fear
would you
of
regret?
having missed out, like having ruined something potentially good,
Right?
or as you going back to your the one example, kind of.
You believe in the one?
Mm, I believe there's ones. There's
Yeah.
like
Okay.
multiple people that we can have.
Okay.
There's compatibility and different other things. So
Do you,
I used to believe in the one.
do what happened?
um, the reality happened.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Interesting. No, that's fine. So let me put it this way. So like, let's understand this first thing. You play video games, Trend?
Yes, I do.
What do you play?
I mainly play Dota 2. Now I play Valorant these days.
Beautiful. Okay. So this is going to be easy to understand. You know, in Dota 2, you can queue up for ranked and you can queue up for unranked, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what you're doing in your relationships is you're never queuing ranked.
Never.
You're always queuing unranked.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, very much.
Explain it to us.
Well, in unranked, even if you lose, there's no real consequence. In ranked, which I also don't do in Dota these days, so it does apply as a peril.
Right?
But yeah,
It's interesting. So if we're talking about self-sabotage, like so, and you want a relationship, let's just like understand that this makes perfect sense. And yet it's kind of bizarre that you pull away from relationships that have the highest value of success or probability
mhm,
of success. The relationships that you actually want are the ones that you're least likely to engage in.
correct.
Right? So that's like kind of weird. And the more that we tunnel down into that, the more that we realize that I think on some level, you're afraid of screwing up the right relationship. And so
Yes.
you're happy because like, and this we'll get to this in a second. So you kind of feel somewhere inside you that there's like something fundamentally that isn't great, right?
Yes.
And so like if there isn't something that's fundamentally great, like you've got to level up in unranked and like learn how to play the game. You're 28 years old, you haven't had a whole lot of healthy relationships, you're falling a little bit behind. You're not like doom and gloom kind of stuff where it's like too late for you, but it's sort of like I kind of see both of the pieces, right? Where there's the part of you that's like a little bit doom and gloom and now you've started to work on that, but it's still sort of there. So now we're going to get to the really tricky thing. As you become more successful, do you think that exacerbates this problem or improves this problem? I know it's kind of a
Um,
weird question.
no, it's a perfect question because what I was thinking of also was I've had milestones that I thought if I hit, it would kind of unblock me. So I thought that when I moved out of my parents' place and got my own place, well, my parents are divorced. So when I moved out of like one of my parents' place and got my own place, that would help because I would be able to kind of show that I have my own place. When I got a good job, I thought that would help me. When I got in shape, I thought that would help me. So I just kept hitting milestones, expecting, something to break the cycle. And it just seems to keep going in that way. So, um, as I move forward in life, which, under some metrics I am, then my obviously tolerance for the unranked is going down. I'm much more craving a ranked experience. Uh,
Hold on,
but
but use two different words that are very different. Is your tolerance for unranked going down, and or because craving and tolerance are two very different things? I don't doubt that you
mm,
crave ranked, but can you
yeah.
tolerate ranked? The more successful you become, does that
Oh,
make it
no, 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 no. But just like, for example, I'm much quicker to end things when I see that it's unranked. Let's say it
okay?
that way,
Okay,
rather than continue forward. But
got
as
it.
as I would before, now I'm much like I'd rather just hey, like I'd rather not play than not play ranked.
Okay, makes sense. So let me ask you again: do you think that becoming more successful helps with this problem, or does it not help with this problem?
It, I don't think it's helped me that much. It's definitely giving me a little bit more confidence, but like it's not a one to one at all. Like it,
Yeah.
it
So
doesn't.
let me ask you something, Trent. Let's say you meet someone who looks like the one, right?
Yeah.
So she's got her stuff together. She's attractive. She's, done a lot of like, she physically takes care of herself. She's got her career going well, and she's 29. what's in the back of your mind when you see a 29-year-old who's single and has their stuff together?
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't have some judgment.
Very good. What's your judgment?
Why didn't they prioritize that? Like, if they were, if everything is so great, why aren't they with somebody?
Exactly. Right? So you have an insecurity. And interestingly enough, this is the really paradoxical thing. And I appreciate so much that you called in. I appreciate that you've been a part of this community, because we don't usually get to this part with people who are in like early members of our community.
Well,
right?
Thank you very much.
So like now something weird is happening where they're like the part of you that is afraid that something is like fundamentally off. The more successful you become, the more you're afraid that someone is going to look at you and be like, where's the catch?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of bizarre, because as you succeed, you were sort of assuming that like the internal sense of like something is off is going to get fixed. And oddly enough, the more milestones you achieve, the better you look on paper, the more you're concerned that if you meet the one, she's going to look at you and be like, wait, something's off here. This guy is too good to be true. What's on the other side of the coin? What do you think about that? Does that resonate with you?
Probably. I also don't like to show people my weak side in any way, or like I don't like. I always like to paint the picture that everything is fine. I have no problems. If anybody, I'm very good at like dealing with other people's problems. But when I don't like help, I don't like accepting help from other people. And so when I show myself to somebody who might be a prospect in dating, I'm going to paint the picture that everything is perfect.
What is the weak side?
I don't know. I like the insecurities that we were talking about, I
Okay.
guess. The fact that obviously I do have, I'm sure, issues. I'm sure I have some sort of blind spots that I can't see. I'm sure there's stuff that I don't even know about. So for me, what I try to hide and suppress is probably my need for any sort of reassurance or help or anything like that.
Okay. It's getting a little, we're adding layers to it, to the onion. But let me ask you something. How are you sure you have issues?
Kind of drawing from the conclusion that if I didn't, I wouldn't be in this situation.
Okay. So like, here's the weird thing. Let's assume that like there's a certain amount of this that's RNG.
Yeah.
How would you tell how are you going to know whether you have issues or don't have issues? How would you be able to tell the difference?
I wouldn't.
So
I
like
wouldn't be able to.
this is important to understand, Trend. So like it's kind of weird, because it's like you believe you have issues because you haven't found a relationship that is long lasting and fulfilling at the age of 28. But like you may not, and then that belief that there's something in you that is left unresolved is exactly what you're afraid is going to screw up meeting the one.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But then like this is kind of a weird self-fulfilling prophecy, because what if you actually don't have issues? So then you have nothing to worry about in the relationship, because you're 28 and the average age at which people are forming long-lasting relationships is like statistically increasing.
Yeah, no, I completely see your point, kind of shooting myself in the foot.
Right. So I think that you're because it's kind of weird, because when I ask you, like, how are you sure you have issues? They're like, there must be a blind spot, because I don't see anything, but it's got to be there. That in and of itself, that conclusion is coming from the insecurity that there's something fundamentally broken.
Yeah.
And then we get into this situation where, okay, so like, let's take a step back and run it from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Somewhere along the way, you were concerned that you could not offer that's not the right phrasing. Somewhere along the way, you were concerned that despite being a successful, good, caring human being, that there's some part of you that is going to screw up a relationship, and that someone would like discover at some point and then break up with you. There's like something
Perfectly
fundamentally messed up with Trend.
Yes.
Okay.
That's in a nutshell.
Okay. So then Trend did what a good person is supposed to do. They started working on themselves, right? That's what we tell everyone, work on yourself. And Trend worked on himself. So he started exercising, hopped jobs for a little while, found a good career, grinded at it, did a lot of self-development work, now has a decent career, now is in decent shape, is a good friend, can accept responsibility, can face challenges, can support people emotionally, right? And then each of those things you thought, okay, at some point, this is going to fix the fundamental insecurity.
Yes.
And it didn't fix the fundamental insecurity.
No.
So now we've got this kind of weird situation where you don't even know what to fix anymore because everything that you saw that was wrong, you've worked on, right?
Yeah. In a sense.
And so now the confusing thing is like, there's some part of you that feels that something is off. And that if you run into the one, like eventually they're going to look at you, you're 28, they're going to say, this guy looks perfect. What's the catch? What's the catch? What's the catch? And you don't know what the catch is, but you're afraid they're going to figure it out. And so then, since you're fundamentally afraid that you may not succeed in a relationship because there's this big boogeyman in the closet that you don't know what it is, you have a blind spot to it, you've worked on everything that you know how to work on, you're afraid that they're going to look at signs in your life like 28, career, exercises, single, like there's got to be something.
Yeah.
Right? And so interestingly enough, like then what happens is you've got a choice when you start dating. And the people that you're more attracted to, you're afraid that you won't be able to, that they're going to discover this thing. It's almost like you're an imposter. You're like a broken person pretending to be a put together person.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you?
I had that in my job at the beginning when I started as well. Very much imposter syndrome for the first like 6 month-ish of that. So till I kind of got enough confidence by succeeding and taking on challenges and failing sometimes, of course, and learning from failures. I'm not perfect by any means, but it's just that I at least I felt like I was given the chance to kind of try and learn, and I felt like in a relationship perhaps it's if I mess up, then that's it.
Yeah. So who's not giving you the chance to try and learn in a relationship?
Oh, me.
100%, right? And you're even then, Trent, you're doing in a sense, quote unquote, the right thing, which is that you keep on queuing for unranked.
Yeah.
Right. So you're like, and it makes perfect sense because you don't want to risk like the possibility of the perfect relationship while you're inexperienced. You want to work out all of these kinks with people that you're not even invested in.
Yeah.
And so you're queuing up for unranked where people are like drunk and Smurfs and feeding and like trying out wonky things. They're not playing the game seriously. And now you've even gotten frustrated with that because you've realized this is actually not what I want to play, but you're afraid to queue up for ranked because what if you lose a game? What if the one comes across, they see that you're broken. They see that, oh my God, Trent is just faking it. He's faking it. He's faking it. He's pretending to have his stuff together, but deep down he doesn't have his stuff together. You're afraid of risking it. So how does your mind protect you from screwing up the perfect relationship, Trend? What does it do?
Don't even try.
100%. And what is not trying? How does it convince you not to try?
You're gonna fail, or probably that.
I think this is where the red flags come in.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
It finds faults in other people.
100%. Right? It gives you reasons. It says, oh, because it's going to protect you because there's no way that your mind is going to let you, because imagine how you would feel if you met the one and you screwed it up. How would you feel?
Horrible.
Horrible. It's just going to reinforce and confirm the fact that you're fundamentally broken. You're not actually, but so that's not really a fact.
Yeah.
Right? So, and your mind is like, oh crap, we love Trend. We want to take care of Trend. We can't let him realize that his deepest, darkest fears are true. And so what it does is it finds red flags. It says, oh, no, that's not the one. You see all these things that are wrong with them, don't bother. But then something subtle happens. As you point out red flags, do they move into the unranked category in your mind?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Right? So maybe they do. But what I'm sort of saying is there are people that you're invested in and people that
Yeah.
you're not invested in. People that you're not invested in, you can date. But when you meet
Yeah.
someone that you're invested in and you find red flags, you actually knock them completely off. You don't move them into this category and start dating them.
Yeah. No, I don't even give them a chance at that point.
Exactly, right? So it's not actually unranked. You're not moving him into the low value
No,
category.
you're right. You're right.
You just avoid them entirely.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? And that's to protect yourself from the rejection and the confirmation. It's not just the rejection, it's the confirmation that you can't succeed in a relationship, that something's
completely agree.
fundamentally wrong. Because that's going to because here you are putting together your life, hoping for the confidence, hoping for the confidence, hoping for the confidence, and you never find it. So in the back of your mind, there's this thing that's like, oh crap, what if something actually is, busted?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And as long as you never queue up, you are never going to be truly rejected. And then there's the hope that actually, if you keep working on it, keep on, playing unranked and getting better career and getting better this and better that, there's this part of your mind that says, okay, the confidence will come eventually. But the interesting paradox, what really keeps you stuck there, is that the more you succeed in the rest of your life, the more that this other complex pops up, which is like, where's the catch?
Yeah.
So you really seem like you can't move in any direction, right? You can't actually queue up for ranked. You can't actually give a real relationship a shot, because what if you screw it up? Even if you keep on working on other dimensions of your life, that's going to just terrify you more, that the more put together you are, if you become a, multi-millionaire, and then you've got a super nice house and you're, super in shape, and you're very emotionally available, and you've got a fancy car and all this kind of stuff. The more that you meet people, the more they're going to be like, what's wrong with this guy? So paradoxically, even advancing is reinforcing the insecurity.
Definitely. And I think external expectations are also increasing around me for, I'm getting to that age where a lot of people, my friends are getting married or getting into serious relationships. My family, I'm sure you've heard this many, many times, but they're starting to ask, when are we going to have a Mrs. Trend? Where are we going to have, little grandchildren
Little
and all
trendlets.
that? Yeah. So we're going to have, and sure, I'm not, super, super pressured, but I definitely feel it from all sides. And internally, it reinforces this, I better get moving, or or not even that. It's more like, why haven't I gotten moving
There
yet?
it is. Well said, Trent. Right? It's beautifully put. So now, Trent, okay, so now we understand it. What are we going to do about it, bro?
Well, like you said, I think I've been stuck, paralyzed between the idea of not taking a risk because I'm too worried of the consequences of it failing. But the only way I can see is to just give it a chance. It's a lot easier said than done, of course. But one thing for sure was to acknowledge that I don't want to waste other people's time. I don't want to just be not serious with somebody because they don't mean that much to me. I don't want to hurt other people. I don't want to compromise their emotions. So I'd rather just kind of aim more carefully and recognize more carefully somebody who might be a potential for me. And that way, if I do kind of set my eye on somebody and they like me too, and I can see, I'd have to be more self-aware if I'm making up certain things about them.
Very good.
Is this person actually this, and this? Or are they just, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they're, maybe I'm making it up, or is this my fear of messing it up? Because I can see this is going somewhere.
Good. So let's try to make it a little easier for you. So I think essentially it's the right answer, but let's try to there isn't a right answer, but it makes a lot of sense to me. So let's try to help you become aware. Let's try to detail out what you should be aware of. The first is notice that your mind is making red flags for people.
Okay.
Okay. Now, here's the thing. When you see a red flag, then you have to try to figure out, is this a real red flag or is this an artificial red flag? And so the key thing there is to ask yourself, is this red flag an excuse I can use to end a relationship with someone that I really want and I'm afraid I'm going to screw up? I
Mm.
realize that's a long sentence, but like
No,
that's the
no, it
key
makes
thing,
perfect sense.
right? Is this my mind's way of protecting me? Am I going to reject them before they reject me?
Excellently
Is it
said. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so if the answer is yes, then I'm not saying that you have to date them, but at least acknowledge that and ask yourself, okay, like, can I actually, am I like, is the fear too strong? Or can
Mm.
I actually like give this a shot? And the neat thing is when you notice that your mind is doing that, the power of that is actually going to decrease and the fear will be easier to overcome.
Okay.
The next thing to kind of think through is that notice that, you know, all of your successes don't necessarily deal with the source of your insecurity, right? So this is
Okay.
a samskar. So like when you develop a lack of confidence that comes from one part of your life, fixing another part of your life doesn't translate into fixing this insecurity. So here's the tricky thing is you started to believe at some point that you were like unlovable by people that are important to you.
Yes.
Now, that may have something to do with divorced parents, like you never really know. I'm not saying that they didn't love you, but the child
It might have.
right? So like it's like little things like parents, like if you're moving houses and things like that, there may have been something where your dad swapped a weekend or your mom swapped a weekend so that they could go on a date. And like that's where you realize like, oh, like this person, cares about other people more than they care about me or something like that. We don't necessarily need to go into that. My point is that the source of the insecurity cannot be fixed directly by putting together other stuff. So you may need to look into the source of that insecurity. Do you have a sense of where that comes from?
I did some. I've been using the Healthy Gamer Guide to kind of analyze myself. I've done a little bit of therapy as well in the past
Good for you.
couple of years, just a few sessions here and there. It definitely helped understand that a lot of these things come from childhood. My parents, as you said, they did get divorced. I'm sure it had some sort of an impact. They lived also in different countries, so I didn't get to see one of my parents for like 6 months at a time. Um, there's a lot of stuff there, and nothing, extremely traumatizing, but stuff that would make you kind of understand how I would get to the point where I feel like I either needed to be the best kid to get attention, or to be responsible for one of my parents' emotions. So I had to be like always the good kid. So that kind of developed into something down the line, I would say, that
So
therapy kind of helped me realize.
very good. So like this is very common, but being the best kid to get attention reinforces the idea that fundamentally you don't deserve attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so interestingly enough, I think that could relate to what we were saying earlier about the more success you actually have, the more concerned someone may be that there's like something that they're missing. Right? Because
Yeah.
it's sort of it's using achievement to justify attention. And so the more successful you become, it's kind of the same parallel where it's like there's this external sense which should justify you wanting to be in a relationship with me. But does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. And I think what you touched on earlier of the trying to make up for one lack with another success is definitely
Yes.
what I didn't even realize I was doing that until you just said that. But that's definitely my mindset maybe might have been, which, brought some positive things, obviously, but
Very good.
didn't didn't make up for the initial problem.
Great. So you're in a healthy place, Trent, because I think now you've realized that being successful in part is to, in a sense, make up for the fact that you feel insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can give you a lot of success, which is fantastic. But now you need to grow past that, right? Now you need to realize that, and this is where sort of dealing with the source of the insecurity, hopefully you'll kind of understand that, the person who's the one, and we'll get to this in a second, the person who's the one is going to be okay with the fact that you're not perfect. Because a good relationship is not about two perfect people getting together. It's about two people who are works in progress, helping each other in a positive way.
That's very comforting, honestly. I don't expect perfection from my partner at all. I don't know why I see that. I don't see that in
But you
reverse,
want
though.
to give them a perfect
Yeah,
product.
yeah, exactly. So I don't expect it from them, but I expect it from myself for them.
Yeah. And so next thing to consider is, when you are dating that person, we'll just kind of like double down on that point, is that, you know, this kind of goes back to like the logical trap of blind spots, right? So you've worked on everything that needs to be worked on, and now we're doing a little bit more work, which is good. But you've got to be super careful about the way you conclude that you're not ready for a relationship. Because if you were ready, you actually wouldn't know, because you just assume that there's another blind spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like
So
the next one.
exactly. So like, how do you know when you're ready if you're always assuming that there's going to be a blind spot, or there's something that you missed, or there's something fundamentally wrong with you, which is why you're 28 and single? And so interestingly enough, I think that's because that comes from the feeling, and you can't logic your way out of a feeling. There's a feeling that there's something wrong with me. And as long as that feeling is there, you're going to continuously think that you're not ready for a real relationship. And so just kind of be aware of that and recognize that you're setting yourself up for a standard that you will never be able to meet. Because no matter how much you work on yourself, no matter how successful you become professionally, no matter how handsome you are, no matter what happens, there's going to be a part of your mind that may still be like, oh, but what about this? We may be missing something. And since you don't know what that is because you fixed everything you've seen, it's so paralyzing to actually go into a real relationship. Because it's like, there's something wrong and I can't see it, I can't see it, I can't see it. How can I possibly enter a real relationship and screw it up until I fix this thing?
Perfectly said.
Right? But then how do you even know that something's wrong? Where do you get that idea?
You're enlightening me, honestly, because I think I've just been working off from the conclusion backwards of if there was nothing wrong, then I wouldn't be in the situation, coupled with the whole, initial insecurity, which I was trying to make up with other things in my life.
Very good. Right? And so, going forward, the last thing I'll kind of leave you with, Trend, and then you're welcome to ask questions and stuff if you've got them, is like, even if there is something wrong with you, that's okay. Right? So what I want you to really be reassured by is you're not perfect. I mean, no one's perfect. And that's okay. What I want you to really appreciate, if you can, is that when you enter a relationship with someone that you're actually like invested in, what you're giving them is not a finished product, but what you're giving them is someone who's willing to work to move forward. And so no matter what the flaw is, no matter what they say about your, like, why are you single? Because the question will come up. And that's where you can even be a little bit honest, and you can say, like, I'm not entirely sure. For a long time, I thought there was something wrong with me. And then, like, I've put my life together in a really meaningful way. But, like, I feel like I'm missing something, but I just don't know what it is. And it's okay to say that. And then you can even use a little bit of a, Dr. K technique, and you can sort of ask them, like, what do you think is wrong with me? Right? And how do you feel about asking that question to someone you care about?
Well, it goes back to the, friends or relatives. When I would ask them, they would tell me, like, hey, why aren't you with anybody? Like, you seem like to be doing great. You seem to be, moving on with your life. You seem to be quite well off, not necessarily financially or anything, but just like as a human being. So, like, if I were to ask them, I would be genuinely curious to know, if a potential partner, let's say, and I asked them, hey, what do you think is wrong with me? And the answer, if they told me nothing, I would somehow have doubt in that. Like, I would somehow doubt their answer. Not because I distrust them fundamentally, but, I hate to say this because it just seems so pessimistic, but I would be like, well, you just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, seeing something I don't even know about.
Yeah. So then how are you confident that there's something there to see?
Exactly. No, that's basically the rut I'm stuck in.
Yeah. So I think asking a potential partner is going to be really, really potentially important to you. And here's why. Trent, there's a big difference between asking your mom what's wrong with me, and they're saying, oh, you're so beautiful, beta, you're Trent, you're so handsome, and you're catch for anyone. That's actually not going to reassure you. But the whole point is that when you ask someone that you care about, And they say, like, 'cause that's the opinion that matters, right? This is what you're afraid of.
Yeah.
And when you ask them, like, hey, what do you see? Like, do you see something like fundamentally wrong? Because, like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And when they say, I don't see anything, that's when you need to, like, be a little bit careful, right? So that's where, like, you got to think about where you are in the relationship. And you can say, like, I'm happy to hear that. The right answer is, if at some point I do something that makes you feel like, is out of line or anything like that, please let me know because I'm working on myself.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd be completely open to that as well.
Perfect.
I'm always open to feedback, and to kind of working on things that either I or other people see in me.
Yeah. So you want to, it's okay for you to doubt, right? Because, like, you're going to need to hear that from them a couple of times. And at the same time, just because this is like theoretically an early stage romantic relationship, you don't want to double down on you're wrong. You just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. No, that would be internal.
Right. So good. I'm glad you're sort of separating that. And then eventually, like, the second time you have that conversation, the third time you have that conversation, it's useful to also use, like, language, like, there's a part of me. So, the third time you have that, when you're feeling more confident in the relationship, you can lean on that person to help you, deal with that, build that confidence. And you can sort of say, there's a part of me that, like, is terrified that one day, like, there's something I did not expect that I'm going to kind of screw up.
Mm-hmm.
And don't own it as truth. Acknowledge that it's a part of your mind that has an insecurity.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to put the burden of fixing all of your insecurities on them in one conversation, which is sometimes the way that we actually sabotage relationships.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Absolutely.
Questions before we wrap up?
No, I think that was really, really, really helpful. And I really appreciate your time and everything that you're doing. And thank you so much for hearing me out and for doing everything that you do. And thank you to everybody. Hopefully this helped somebody else as well.
Oh, Trent, I think it's going to help a ton of people.
I'm happy. And hopefully I'll implement the things you were talking about as well.
Can I offer you a kind word as well?
Absolutely.
So I just want to say thank you for coming on, because I think that this is the kind of thing that we talk about, issues of lack of confidence with people who really, really struggle with confidence. What I really appreciate about you calling in is that as we work on ourselves, interestingly enough, it doesn't just fix all the problems. And even as we work on ourselves, the way that we build confidence, we really have to sort of tackle it head on. But ironically, we can't really tackle it head on until we've tried to fix all the other dimensions of our life. And so I really appreciate all the work that you've put in, because I think we're getting to explore a level of insecurity in relationships and self-sabotage that oftentimes we don't explore. And so I'm so glad that you put in the work, and I'm actually, like, very hopeful and oddly enough confident, even though I don't know you. I'm confident that you really can end up in a very positive, healthy, long-term relationship.
Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. And I wish you a great day.
You too. Take care.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.
So let's just do a quick summary. So when we grow up with a lack of confidence, and when we struggle with dating, we're told, put your life together, focus on yourself. And so we do all those things. And as we put our life together, something kind of tricky can happen, is that as we start to put our life together and we're sort of ready to date, as we crave dating, sometimes what we'll do is actually create artificial red flags in our mind to step away from the relationships that we actually want. We'll sort of self-sabotage when we're really, like, when there's someone that we have a potential of having a real connection with. And that self-sabotage actually comes from a place of, paradoxically, like, protection. Because despite the fact that we've grown in a lot of dimensions, sometimes growing in a lot of dimensions doesn't solve that fundamental insecurity. And then we get into a very interesting trap, which is that the more that we put our lives together, the more we start to be afraid that something is, like, wrong with us and that someone will see through all of the false work that we've done. If I'm 28 years old and I have a successful career and I'm in shape and stuff like that, and I start to date someone that I care about, we're terrified of the question, why are you single? Why are you still single? You know, why haven't you, if you're so perfect, like, what am I missing? And it's the fear that they're going to see that. And the fear of rejection when they sort of realize that we're not everything that we pretend to be, that causes us to actually withdraw from the relationship. And so even though we want that relationship, we actually will come up with excuses to not date the people that we actually want to date with. Because we're afraid that something, like, they're going to realize that there's something going on here. So paradoxically, sometimes the more successful we become, the more we sort of start to be afraid that something's fundamentally wrong with us because I'm so successful. Why am I still single? Well, in order to balance that out, right? Because if I'm becoming successful over here, in order to balance that out, I need something very, very negative. And I just don't know what it is because I fixed everything that I needed to work on. And so paradoxically, like, the more we succeed, the more we feel paralyzed in terms of dating. And sometimes that can manifest actually as self-sabotage. So fantastic caller. And thank you very much for calling in. Tech Teller, let's move on. Hello.
Hello.
What do you go by, friend?
I go by Tom.
Tom? Nice to meet you, Tom.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So what's holding you back, Tom?
So basically what's holding me back lately, and not lately, but yeah, it's not truly believing in the validation I receive. So even if it comes from people that I really care, mom, dad, friends, significant others, I can truly feel that it is real. So and that leads to me trying to find answers by myself and not trusting when people tell me like everything is okay or I'm doing a good job. So yeah, I found it kind of fake and cheesy to think that when somebody tells me like I'm doing a great job or that's it's all good, I don't know why, but I find it like kind of fake and cheesy to think I'm doing a good job. So I don't tend to validate other people because I found that it is fake or kind of fake, and that leads to me all the time anxiety trying to find my own answers to the question that I am doing a good job or it is all good here. But yeah, that's basically
So
it.
are you able to find your own answers are you able to validate yourself?
Mostly I do that by just work harder, or not work harder, but find my own goals and objectives and doing them. I found that that's what makes me feel that I'm doing a good job, but I mostly don't don't find my own answers.
Okay. So let's like understand that a little bit.
Yeah.
So you're saying that when you're concerned that you're not doing a good job, you'll try to come up with goals, and the answer that you sometimes come up with that works is to work harder. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair, but not much really. I refer a little bit more about yeah. Sorry, I'm losing my thoughts here, but
That's okay. So can I ask you
yeah,
again? So when you
yeah,
look
of
for
course,
your own answer,
yeah,
sometimes the way that you can help yourself feel better in that situation is to work harder.
yeah. Sometimes it is.
Sometimes, right?
But there is sometimes that it's not a thing about working harder or not. To give you an example, maybe I'm on a place that, or a party or something that I don't feel safe in it, or don't feel 100% comfortable. So a friend came and said, tell me like, it's all good. People are good, are not judging you, are people is cool. And that's another example where I can truly believe that.
But you don't believe that, or you do believe that?
I don't believe that because it's like I keep feeling that the place is not safe, and I can't feel comfortable in some situations.
Okay.
So to give you a little bit more perspective on this, this is something I've been working on therapy. Um,
Good for you.
um, Sorry.
I said good for you. Can
Oh
you please
yeah,
tell me more?
thank you, thank you. Yeah, that we found out that at some point of my childhood, my house became very toxic. Toxic. Um, my dad and my sister keep fighting a lot all days. Very toxic ambient. But the thing is that I was really put on a side. So I was the child that um, so all the fighting, all the toxic plays was during the night when I wasn't. So if so, it was like all hidden for me. The only thing that I heard is my mom coming to me and saying that it's all good and that there's no problem and that there's not a reason to be fearful or anything. And at the same time, I'm hearing my dad yelling and my sister yelling, and I think that it is what made me not being able to believe in in any validation that someone can give me. Uh, so yeah, basically.
Okay. Well, that was very helpful. I think that puts things in context,
Yeah.
answers a lot of my questions. So let's. So let me just make sure I understand you, Tom.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're in a situation where you feel not confident. And
Yeah.
sometimes people will try to reassure you.
Yeah.
And their reassurance doesn't work. And so then what you'll do is you'll try to like come up with you'll go through your own process of reasoning to try to figure out, okay, is what I'm doing okay or not okay? And even when you go through your own process, sometimes you sort of conclude that you're not okay, but there are some situations in which you can sort of say, okay, like let me just work harder, and then you can kind of feel good about yourself. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay. So let me ask you something. If you're trying to figure out if you're doing something wrong or right, and your answer is, I need to work harder, does that mean that you're doing a good job or not a good job?
Um, I think that maybe it's not that I'm not doing a good job, but it's a thing that it's not enough. So I think I looked for that answer. Um, for yeah, I don't trust anybody telling me like it is enough, it is good, don't work any harder. So I just go and work harder, I think, or do a lot of more research and find what else can I do to improve in that.
Okay, good. Right? So that's important to understand is that interestingly enough, the way that you reassure yourself is actually through reinforcing that what you're doing isn't good enough.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. I think it does.
And so, what impact does it have objectively on your life when you work harder?
Um, Not good. I don't feel like I do much with that mindset.
Okay.
Mm, the most I think the only thing I do is that sabotage me and start with loops of anxiety and just don't doing much, or grinding something that is not really has a value for me, and don't make me feel like proud.
Good. Okay. So I mean,
Uh,
not that that's good, but I'm glad you understand that. So
yeah, yeah.
let's think about that. So if this mindset creates more anxiety for you, doesn't really sustainably improve your life, what does it give you to adopt that mindset? Why do you do it?
Um, I think it's my way to try and find an answer to the question of is this good or is not good?
Very good.
Uh,
Right? So
yeah.
so what I'm hearing is that even though working harder doesn't actually potentially do a lot for you, what it does is it at least reassures you that, or it quiets down the feelings that you're not doing a good job, right? Because if you're grinding, then that sort of counters the idea that I'm not doing a good job.
Yeah, and I feel like at least I'm doing something.
Very good, right?
And the thing with that is that I I do a lot of things because I do a lot of things. I like doing a lot of things, but I think doing a lot of things sometimes doesn't let me do the things that I really want to do. No, want to do, but I really, yeah, choose to do to achieve an objective, or something that I want to do in life. So I often find myself doing a lot of things that it's not that I dislike them, but doing a lot of things to keep me um, um, quiet in my mind, the thought that I'm not doing anything to like do a
Yep.
better job.
So
Yeah, but
so I want you to kind of I'm tempted to just grab my iPad. Can you hold on a second?
yeah, of course.
I almost want to try to draw this out for you, Tom. Is that okay?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, of course.
So let me ask you just one or two other questions while I'm setting this up. How do you feel about yourself?
Um, lately, the last couple of years, I really improved on myself and my self image. I make a lot of change to be and feel in the way that a lot of time wanted to be and feel. So I feel mostly good with myself. A lot better that it was all my childhood and most of my life. But yeah,
Okay.
to yeah, I feel good with myself, but I'm this search of trying to improve all these kind of things a lot. Uh, yeah, I feel like I'm on a road too, but yeah.
Okay. So let's let you can see what I'm sharing with you.
Oh, give me a second. Yeah.
Okay. So your concern is that you're not able to be validated by other people, right?
Yeah.
And you're not so let's say you have doubt. So you're not sure whether you're doing a good job. And in comes someone else with a validation. And what happens is that bounces right off. It doesn't actually sink in. With me so far?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So then what happens is when you have doubt, you do an internal exploration. And then the internal exploration concludes one of two things, or actually, not doing a good job. Oh. Sorry. Not doing a good job. Or work harder. With me so far?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my handwriting is so bad. So when you work harder, does this actually improve things? It doesn't actually improve things. But what it does is offers some reinforcement or some alleviation. So you do get a positive that at least I'm doing something. You with me?
Yeah.
Okay, so that sort of decreases the doubt a little bit. Let's actually change our color here to green. Okay. Now, the problem is that the way that you're managing this doubt is by working inefficiently. Do you see? This is the only thing that actually helps.
Yeah.
And even then, the idea of working harder, you only need to work harder if you're not doing a good job in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think you've done a really good job of sort of discovering that the core of the issue is that other people's validation or reassurance doesn't actually work. You with me?
Yes.
Because if this worked, if this did not bounce off, then the doubt could be alleviated. You wouldn't have to end up wasting your time doing work that isn't important, and then like everything would be fine. Right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
other thing that's very, very important is that you have done therapy, which is really good. And it was interesting that you just jumped right there. But then you're sort of recalling these experiences with toxicity in the household. And then your mom would reassure you. And what would she say? Everything's okay. And that's basically a lie, right?
Yeah.
She would lie to you and tell you everything is okay. So what is the lesson that you learned?
Yeah, when somebody tell me it is all good, it may not, and it probably won't be.
So this is how you learned how to reject validation.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
there's another thing that we haven't really talked about, which is where is the source of this doubt? So do you have a sense of why do you think you're not doing a good job in the first place?
Mm, I don't know if that I I start thinking that way, but there is situation that you have to like question yourself if you're doing a good job or not doing a good job. So I think that's when I have the doubt. But I think that that doubt just followed me on each aspect of my life.
Yeah, so where does that doubt come from?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So now this is going to be kind of interesting. So I'm going to give you sort of a different kind of perspective. So we've got two options. So if we look at this, what do we need to do? We need to either allow you to be validated, or we need to figure out where the source of the doubt came from. Does that make sense? Because if the validation works, okay, then
Yeah.
you don't need to do this internal exploration. You don't need to work harder, and you don't believe you're doing a bad job, right? That fixes the
Yeah.
problem. So let me ask you something. What's your relationship with your mom like?
Um, Very close, actually. It is good. These last years, I've been working on, yeah, starting. It was really, really good relationship until a couple of years that I started to think a little bit more about these things. Therapy helped me to get to know this cycle that my mom has to be always telling me that it's all good and it's all perfect. I started to stop relying on my mom telling me that it's all good to live life. And I think that yeah, I a lot of communication went there, but I think overall it's a good relationship.
Okay. Have you talked to her about, have y'all ever talked about how you grew up and what she used to say to you?
Yeah, like few weeks ago, I had the courage to ask them how she felt and what's their perspective on all this. Was really difficult. but it wasn't difficult because she weren't listening or anything like that. She's a really open person, and that can hear what I feel, and I value that a lot. But it was really difficult for me because it's all recent, this past trauma. So yeah.
So what happened when you asked her, like, hey, when I grew up, like, there was all this fighting going on, there was a lot of toxicity, and you kept telling me that everything was okay. What did she say?
She say that she understand that, um basically said like she didn't invalidate my feeling. She said like, I understand that, I understand that you feel that way. Sorry for that being my own, my only way of dealing with things, because I was dealing too with my sister that had other problems. So yeah, that's basically that. She chose to put me on a side and protect me from that toxic place, because she felt it was the best option at that time.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that
how?
really helped me a lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So let's understand a couple of things. So first of all, Tom, you're making it easy for me, my friend.
I'm sorry.
No, this is great. I really love it. So this is something I really love about our community is so this is great because, like, basically, I want to say 2 years ago, if someone had called in, the first thing what we would have sort of gotten to was the fact that you learned to not trust validation, right? So why do you reject validation? Because you essentially learned to not trust validation. So if anyone out there is struggling to be in finding that they reject validation, the key thing is that y'all need to do the kind of exploration that Tom has already done, which is figure out, when did your mind learn to distrust validation? And you've already done that. You figured that out in therapy. So the second thing
Yeah.
is that in order to start healing from distrusting validation, one of the key ways that you can do is have a conversation with mom. And you've already done that, where you talk to your mom and you say, hey, like, you have to acknowledge that she was telling you things, and she has to own it too. And the good news is when she owns it and she says, yes, I was reassuring you, she wasn't actually validating you, she was reassuring you. We'll get to that in a second. I was reassuring you, and that reassurance was false. Because actually, what she did in this conversation is validate you. Does that make sense?
Okay. Okay, yeah, I think
Right?
so.
Because you said, hey, mom, by the way, when we grew up, you told me everything was going to be okay, and everything was not okay. And she didn't say, oh, no, everything is going to be fine. Everything is okay. Everything is okay. Everything is okay. She says, no. You are correct. There was a problem. That was the best I could do at the time. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
That is actually validation. So this
Okay.
is important to understand. What you're rejecting is reassurance. So when you go to
Okay.
work and you say, hey, I don't think I'm doing a great job, and people reassure you, they say, no, everything is okay. Everything is okay. Everything is okay. That's what your mom used to say. Do you understand?
Okay. Yeah, that's strong. But yeah.
What do you mean that's strong?
Not strong, but hard to like sink in.
Yep. Okay, good. I mean, that's okay, right? It's heavy. Is that fair?
Yeah,
Is that,
it's the phrase "everything is okay." It is still heavy for me to hear it and all that.
I'm with you. It's
Yeah.
going to be heavy, right? Because
Yeah, because just a little bit perspective, I think that I speak you something that it was really chewed up, but to even acknowledge that I have that toxic environment was a really hard process and leads to a lot of depression and month of not being able to live life. So I think that right now I'm on a point that I have things a lot more chewed up. But yeah, it is kind of still hard to go back to them.
Can you help me understand what you were saying? Chewed up?
Yeah, chewed up. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Like yeah, like I've been processing the thing a lot, so that's what I mean.
Okay.
So it's not like super uh, raw in my mind.
Okay. Okay. Good. So I think you're on the right track. How does it
Okay.
feel when I say that, Tom?
Yeah, I feel that way actually.
Okay.
But I think that I don't have much practical tools to deal with this and how to like do something about it. But yeah, I understand the process and all these that you told me is very, very helpful. Uh,
So can we talk about that for a second?
yes.
So you're concerned. You're concerned that you don't have practical tips and that you may not be able to make progress with that. Is that right?
I think kinda. But that get me sometimes. Sometimes I just trust that things that are in my mind will be helping me improve these things. But sometimes I feel like I need specific things to like do or change to get better. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds so hard because on the one hand, I'm hearing you sort of say that you've recognized that you've made some progress and that your mind is moving in the right direction. And at the same time, I'm also hearing like almost like a fear that if you don't do something very practical and someone doesn't lay it out for you, like what if it isn't enough?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
How are you feeling right now when I say that?
I feel like yeah, acknowledging my fear it's fearful. Like to try to change and to trust somebody that like care about me, telling me that it is so good, and I really want to be able to trust that, and I really want to work on that, and sometimes not feeling like I have any tool or things to do to grasp on. It's like, ugh,
Yeah.
give me fear. Yeah,
Oh yeah. I mean, because what even your sigh there was really important because what I'm hearing is that like this needs to be fixed. It's really important,
yeah.
right? Like you really need to work on this. But what if you don't have the right tools? That sounds scary.
Oh, yeah. Sorry if I get emotional right now, but
No, yeah. So now
yeah.
I want you to pay attention, Tom. What are you feeling right now?
Uh, I'm kind of about to cry, but yeah, I feel like
What's making you
that
want to cry?
the fear of not being able to live life trusting when somebody tell me like it is good and yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm doing something that's a little bit tricky with you right now. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
realizing that, Tom. Do you recognize what I'm doing?
I'm not sure. No.
I'm validating you. How does it feel?
It feel good. Feel heard and and
But you're feeling fear. How's that good?
oh yeah. I think. um, I mean, yeah. What gives me fear is the thoughts that run in my mind about how I will be dealing with this, but the conversation and how I feel talking to you and you telling me like uh, it should be difficult feeling the way how you
Yeah.
feel. That make me feel a lot of relief and
It's weird,
like
right? So
yeah,
so now we're going to try.
feeling
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I feel heard and like
Okay.
uh, Yeah.
So now we're going to try the opposite, Tom. You ready? Tom,
Yeah, I think I am.
I think with all the therapy and everything that you're doing and you're calling in, I think you're going to be fine. I think everything is going to be okay. You're working on yourself. You're going to be great. You have nothing to worry about.
Okay.
How
Yeah.
does that feel?
It's good. I sometimes feel the same, and I feel like I don't have much of a problem, but not in a diminishing way. Is more now just trust the process and trust me. Uh, but yeah, it feels good
It feels good. In what way?
in a way that yeah,
Do you believe
I
me?
uh I think I want to, but the fear about
Beautifully
not
said.
that not being real is there.
Yeah.
It's not gone.
So
Yeah.
beautifully said, I want to, right? Because it's hard for you to say, oh, like you're calling in, right? And you're talking to Dr. K. It's hard to say, Dr. K, you're wrong. So this is what I'm pointing out to you is that first of all, so beautifully done, Tom. And now I'm going to tell you, I honestly do think that I think you're moving in the right direction. I think it's going to be hard for you for a while, but if you keep on moving in this direction, I'm optimistic that you will continue progressing the way that you have. What do you think about that?
Okay. Yeah. I feel the same on that. I think that yeah, being calm and trusting uh, all the work that I've done to get here will help me, and I should trust that and just
Yeah.
keep working on therapy and all that. And yeah,
Tom, you know what I hear? I hear that you've put in a lot of work and you've made a lot of progress that you can be proud of. And also that you're afraid that that may not be enough. That
yeah,
you really need some kind of practical tip to fix this. And that
yeah, because
you want to
yeah,
be able to trust yourself fully, but you're not sure if that's actually going to be enough.
yeah. Yeah, because there was so much time that I tried like a lot of practical things to do, and that leads nowhere. And once I really have a click and started therapy and started acknowledging all the things, like I understood the process and that I was on. But yeah, that feeling that sometimes I need practical thing, it uh, doesn't let me truly believe on all
Well,
the things that I done.
that's kind of interesting. Are you so you were telling me that you've tried a lot of practical things and they don't seem to work for you?
Mm, yeah, but not practical in not practical like right now, but much more, a bit more of the work harder thing.
Okay.
So a lot
Well,
of
so
my
I'm
yeah.
kind of confused, Tom. So help me understand. Do you think that the
Yeah.
right move is to find practical tips or the right move is to trust yourself and trust the
I think
process?
that the good thing is to like trust the process because I feel the process. I really first time in my life that I feel like things are moving forward when I want to be. But I think it's a habit to think like I need to do this and this and this, and then maybe I'm better. Uh, I
Yeah.
think I need to break that habit to, yeah,
That's so interesting.
yeah.
Do you
Uh,
So I think this conversation is beautiful, Tom. You know why?
why?
Because you're convincing me of what the right thing to do is. Right? You're convincing me over the course of this conversation. We started out with sort of like, oh, I can't I can't accept other people's validation. I need practical tips. What if it's not enough? And then now you're telling me, well, actually, like practical tips haven't really helped very much. And I've realized that it's old thinking that's been habitually trained, but isn't necessarily correct. And that I have made a lot of progress by trusting in myself. And I've made, I've had a serious conversation with my mom. I've gone to therapy, and I'm actually growing as a human being. And that's what I need to continue doing.
Yeah.
You sound like you're doing great.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Is it okay to say I'm proud of you?
yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
You don't reject that?
Uh, no, actually, I don't. I feeling proud of myself right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at what we just did.
Yeah, that's really it.
I'm proud of you too.
Yeah.
I'm tearing up. I didn't think you were going to be able to be proud of yourself.
Yeah, it fit good.
Yeah, it really does. Like I'm feeling hurt. I've got like a lump in my throat, but I feel very proud of you, and I'm so happy that you're on this journey.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
feel hurt inside. I don't understand why.
Why? Were you expecting something different?
I mean, so usually when I feel pride, I don't feel hurt. I think maybe what I'm feeling is like I actually am feeling an acknowledgement of actually like how much you've suffered, and I can be proud that you're making progress, but it's also like you didn't start from a good place, right? And you've been working really, really, really hard, and there's a part of me that almost feels like you should have deserved to start in a normal place, and if you had worked this hard, you would have ended up very, very successful and happy. I think there's a part of me that's sad because even after working so hard, you're just like getting to be normal.
Yeah.
And that feels really unfair to me.
Yeah, I actually think about that sometimes. It's like I can see my potential on so many things, and I know that I'm strong enough to accomplish things that are meaningful to me. But sometimes I found like drag it down because of all this work I have to do on something that I don't say that it shouldn't have happened, but it is a shame that happened. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Can I share just one or two other small thoughts with you? Just something for you to think about?
Of course.
So we talked a little bit about, I just want to kind of fill in this chart. So you already had a conversation with your mom. I think that's really, really important. Another thing that I want you to consider doing is trying to validate other people. I know we talked about that a little bit,
Yeah.
but I don't want you to reassure them. Right? If someone is struggling around you, in order to learn how to validate properly and how to accept validation, sometimes it can help to try to support other people.
Okay.
Just practice it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you
I've
have to.
been. Yeah, I've been trying to be more open with my relationships and try to talk a bit more about things that happen in their lives. And yeah, this is a good thing for you to tell me. I will be
You happy
having
with
in
the
my
practical tip?
yeah.
Okay.
So can you quickly outline me the difference between validation and reassurance
Beautiful.
to like have it in my mind right now and
Yeah,
to
absolutely. So this is something that we teach all of our coaches. Therapists learn this as well. So validating is acknowledging someone else's experience. Reassurance is actually telling everyone that it'll be okay.
okay.
There's a big
So
difference.
so reassurance is like before you do a judgment.
No, so reassurance is actually it's invalidating. Because if you tell me, Tom, that I'm really struggling and, everything in my life is hard, and I say to you, no, everything's fine, you're brilliant, you're okay, everyone at work tells you you're doing a good job, that's not actually validating, it's actually invalidating. Because I'm
Okay,
saying you're wrong. right?
Yeah, I understand.
You're
Yeah.
you're foolish for believing that everything is not okay. So
Yeah.
reassurance is oftentimes actually invalidating.
Yeah.
The weird thing, and you may have remembered this, is that when you validate someone, even though you're telling them, yeah, you should be afraid, and you may have remembered this from a few moments ago, you actually feel better, even though you're acknowledging the fear. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird because, wait, you're telling me that it's okay to be afraid. Yeah, like if you're afraid, like you're not an idiot. Right? But oddly enough, so what validation really does is a lot of people think that if I acknowledge someone's negative emotions, I'm going to reinforce them.
Yeah.
Right? I'll make it worse. But actually, when someone is feeling afraid and when they're feeling afraid, part of what they're feeling is alone. And when you reassure them, you actually make them feel more alone. Whereas when you validate them, at least, like, even if you're like, I'm not saying that everything in your life is going to be easy. In fact, what I'm saying is that I think it's really sad that you had to deal with this stuff. This feels really unfair to me. And yet, when I say something like that, because your actual problems don't change, right? No matter what I say, your life is going to be your life. The difference is, are you alone in it? And what validation really helps people do is acknowledge that negativity, face that negativity, not feel alone in it. And then that actually helps them feel better. And then, I don't know, I'd recommend that you go back and you watch the VOD, but like you kind of flipped over the course of this conversation.
Okay. Yeah, I will.
And you were sort of talking about, oh, I have all these problems and like, I don't know if it's going to be enough. And like, I need practical tips and all this kind of stuff. And then like towards the end of the conversation, you're kind of saying, oh, but actually like I used to do a lot of practical tips and the practical tips actually feel like working harder. And that actually doesn't help. And what I really need to do is trust myself. And when you say things like, I should trust myself, that's what we call confidence. And so over the course of this conversation, you've actually become more confident.
Yeah.
The last thing that I want to share, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
The last thing that I want to share with you, okay, is when you're in a situation and your mom says everything is okay. Let's say this is reality. This is going to be kind of confusing, okay? I just don't know how to. And your mom says everything is okay. Sometimes what happens is our mind will have to balance that out with doubt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because you know that reality is not that side.
Right? So when
The
you
right
and your
side.
mom have this kind of conversation, I've seen this a lot, where when people don't acknowledge reality and one person pretends that everything is okay, it's almost like the burden of this reality is shared between you and your mom. And it sounds like your mom used a coping mechanism, which is pretending everything is okay and trying to convince the world that everything is okay. And sometimes what we see in kids when parents use this coping mechanism is the kid actually has to balance that with an appropriate amount of doubt. Because you can't trust your mom, right? So then, like, I know it sounds kind of weird, but, and so when we're thinking about the origins of your doubt, sometimes I've seen this kind of thing where when a child grows up with an overly reassuring parent, what they actually learn how to do is doubt.
Yeah.
It's almost like the opposite of copium. Because your mom is like, you know copium?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just something for you to kind of think about. I think it's really healthy that you had one conversation with your mom. And I want you to just think a little bit about where you learned to doubt and what the relationship between your mom's perspective that everything is okay is and your doubt.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good. Yeah. Sounds good. Very good.
How you holding up, Tom?
I'm good. I'm good. Actually, I feel a lot more relief. And I think that this talk helped me acknowledge the conflict that is in my mind between trusting myself and the process and wanting to fix things with tips. And yeah, it really helped me to understand the difference between validation and reassurance, and recognizing that I think it will help me a lot validating new people and understanding when somebody is validating on or invalidating validating me. That was really helpful.
Yeah, Tom, I also want to say I'm assuming that English isn't your first language because you have an accent and stuff, but you're very, very good at organizing your thoughts and summarizing. I very much appreciate that.
Thank you so much. That's really good to hear.
Good. Any last questions before we wrap up?
No, I don't think I have any more questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your help and for your time.
Thank you very much for calling in. I hope a lot of people were able to learn from your experience.
Yes.
Take care, buddy.
Bye-bye.
So let's do a quick summary. So it's kind of tricky because sometimes we reject other people's reassurance, right? So we doubt something in ourselves. And what we'll naturally do is we'll turn to other people and we'll sort of be like, okay, like, hey, like, am I doing a good job at work? Is it okay? Like, am I a good friend? Am I a good partner? And just, no matter what they say, like, even if they reassure us, we'll ask for reassurance, but the moment they reassure us, we'll actually reject it. So where does that actually come from? Interestingly enough, it comes from oftentimes somewhere along the way, our mind learns that other people can't be trusted. And sometimes, as in the case of Tom, like what we really saw is that there's like a really good reason why they're able to do that. And so a lot of this comes down to really understanding what the difference between validation and reassurance is, and how putting our heads in the sand and ignoring problems actually does not work. So, really beautiful case of someone who struggles to receive validation and reassurance from others and trying to understand where that really comes from. So if we like sort of ask people for reassurance and end up rejecting it, it turns out that we're not fundamentally busted. It turns out that somewhere along the way, our brain learned to distrust what other people say about us. And so overcoming that actually involves a couple of different things. Understanding where the origin of your own doubt is, understanding how your brain was conditioned to reject what other people say, and ultimately understanding the difference between validation and reassurance. We probably have time for one more, Tech Teller.
Cool.
Hello, friend.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing, Doctor?
I'm doing well. Can you tell me what you go by, my friend?
Yes. My name is Kami.
Okay. Nice to meet you, Kami.
Nice to meet you as well.
And what's holding you back?
Well, what's holding me back is the fear of underachieving, basically, in nowadays.
Can you tell me?
Not being able to, not being able to reach my goals.
Okay. And so can you help me understand why you're afraid that you'll underachieve?
Mhm. The goal, the end goal, the point that I'm supposed to reach in my head is way high up above than what looks reachable. I don't know if I made it understandable,
Yeah.
but imagine you're climbing, let's say a tree, but the tree, you cannot see the end of the tree. You cannot reach the top of the tree. So even looking at it just makes you want to stop. Why even try? There's no
Okay.
end point.
Okay. So let me ask you a couple of questions. What makes you think that you're going to underachieve? What makes you think you won't get to the top of the tree?
Okay. Looking at it, I should give a little background on myself.
Please.
I finished medical school. I'm a general practitioner right now. I
Okay.
worked for a year. I decided I wanted to go into research to have a better, academic life. So I started looking at PhDs. So I found something that I really like as a research topic. I started getting into it, but I'm looking at like the names that do research in that topic, and the difference between them and me is just seems like unapproachable. That
Okay.
their point is. So I'm 25. I've been studying for 19 years in my life, and it just feels like I'm just starting to get into it. So I've been doing this for 19 years. What is the point? Where am I getting with this? Am I going to study for another 40 years? And at the end of those 40 years, what am I going to do? What's going to happen?
Okay. Thank you so much for offering that context.
Yeah. Sorry, I haven't made it clear at the beginning.
No, I was very clear.
Yeah.
I was, I think you were pretty clear that. Let me just. Can I think for a second?
Yes. Yes.
So, what makes you want to do research?
I basically want to do something that people haven't done. I want to find something that nobody has ever found. I just want to do something new. I just want to add something.
Why?
I want to have a impact. I want to have a memory of myself after I die.
You want to be remembered?
Yeah, I want to be remembered.
Okay. What makes you want to be remembered?
I'm not the biggest person when it comes to believing in afterlife. So what we do here is gonna be left here. So whatever I do, even studying in medicine, when you read the names, when you learn about people, I look at them and I see them as, let's say, guidance. Like you see the name and you look at what they did and they're inspiring. I want to inspire. I can be like a little name somewhere, but even 10 people can read it. And if it's inspiring to someone,
Okay. Do you feel like do you, Kami, do you feel insignificant right now?
I do feel insignificant.
How long have you felt
I
that
feel
way?
like so far, always.
Since you were 6?
I'd say mostly started around like elementary school, thinking about it, just looking at other kids. Because like what I always did was compare. That was the way that I looked at my own success. I compared myself to the other kids in class. My friends, for example, one of my closest friends was really good at gaming. I always compared my gaming skills to him. One of my friends was really good at sports. I compared my sports skills to him. I always wanted to be better. I always wanted to be like the top. That's what I always tried to do. That just went on forever. Even in medical school, I tried to do a lot of things. I just jumped from one branch to another branch, but at the end of the day, I didn't finish anything.
Okay.
So now looking forward, just going forward, thinking about it, I'm just gonna, if I get accepted to the PhD program that I'm playing, I'm gonna go to the PhD. What's gonna happen after PhD? Maybe postdoctoral, maybe residency. I'm gonna finish that. Then what's gonna happen? Maybe I'll do research, maybe I'll do clinic. And then what's gonna happen? Nothing is happening at the end. I don't see the end of the line. So I'm starting to work. I'm always trying to be better at something I'm doing. That's the goal. I'm trying to be better at what I'm doing. I'm comparing myself to other people. I'm trying to see what's approachable. I'm trying to get better and better and better, but I don't see the end point. Am I just going to spend my whole life trying to be better at what I'm doing? Is this the goal?
Sounds like it. How does that?
But what is to accomplish from this?
You tell
What
me.
am I?
You're the
what,
one who wants it.
What is my? Yeah. What is my 60-year-old self gonna look back and say? Oh, I'm really glad I spent my last like 35 to 40 years studying on this topic.
Yeah. So, I mean, but you tell me, Kami. So when you're 60 years old and you've spent your youth, your middle years, your entire life, and now they're gonna name a disease after you. Kami's
Yes.
autoimmune encephalitis. And then all of the medical students after that will learn about Kami's autoimmune encephalitis. And your name will be in medical textbooks. What do you how does that If I tell you that that's what they're going to do, how would you feel about
That
that?
makes me feel a little bit accomplished. I feel I did something. I can say that I did something. At the end of the day, I provided something.
Yeah, but let me ask you something. When they name a disease after you, what is your mind going to do? So thinking about it now, you imagine you'll feel accomplished. But when you reach that point, do you think that's how you're going to feel?
At this point, if you ask me, yes.
Okay, good.
But when I reach that point, I cannot say for sure for now.
Why are you a doctor?
I wanted to do research. I wanted to do research, so I looked at in what topics I can do research, and I saw that medicine was the most interesting one for me.
Okay. Do you feel accomplished in being a doctor?
Just being a general practitioner doesn't feel accomplishing.
Okay. So
It feels like it's not enough. That's what I mean by underachieving.
Yeah.
I finished medical school, but I don't feel enough.
So let's understand. By the way, Kami, this is beautiful. I mean, I recognize you're suffering a lot, but I think it's beautiful how you're laying out what the challenges you face are. Is it okay for me to say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Completely fine.
So I think the reason that you're underachieving is it's kind of interesting because you call it underachievement, whereas you're actually achieving a lot, right? You're accomplishing a lot. It's just not satisfying for you.
Mhm.
And so what I'm imagining is that when they name Kami's autoimmune encephalitis, what you're going to do is say, well, Kami's autoimmune encephalitis only affects 1 in 10 million people, whereas this other person who has, let's say, Bob's
Arthritis.
Bob's arthritis, right?
Yeah.
Bob's autoimmune arthritis affects way more people. And I just get one line in a textbook, whereas this other person's arthritis is all the medical exams and is way more common, and they spend a whole day talking about it.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you think that's a possibility, that when you discover something, it won't be enough?
Yeah, definitely.
So
Definitely might not be enough, even whatever I do. That's the biggest fear. The fear of not being enough. Doing this much so far, still not be feeling enough. And I'm looking at the future. There's hopefully, if I'm lucky enough, I have 40, 50 more years to live. I'm scared
unless you
that
get
this will
Kami's
be.
autoimmune encephalitis.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows?
There are two ways to
like-
get diseases named after you, my friend.
Yeah, true. I can be the patient zero. Who knows? But yeah, looking at those 40, 50 years in the future, will I feel accomplished eventually? Will it be enough? Is it gonna be? Am I gonna one day look in the mirror and be like, okay, you did good. That's enough. Good job.
What do you think?
I feel that's my problem. I feel it's unachievable. I don't see that.
Yeah,
My
what?
father,
Yeah, go ahead.
my father is a neurosurgeon. He's almost 60. He's been working his whole life. And when I talk to him, he's still like, oh, you know what? I'll work as long as my hands and my feet allow me to. As long as I can do my work, I'll work. And they seem so unbothered by it.
How does your dad feel about having how does a neurosurgeon feel about having a general practitioner as a son?
um, he has a different approach than the most commonly seen one. Even when I was first getting into medical school, he told me to do whatever I want. He said that he'll support me, just pick what you want to do, be good at it, and I'll support you.
Okay.
So now, when I'm talking about research, he says the same thing. Pick something you're like and be good at it, and I'll support you all you want. So,
Kami, let me ask you a different question. How does it feel being a general practitioner and having a neurosurgeon as a father?
It comes with its, toughnesses, I guess I can say.
Like what?
hard parts. the military approach to life, being up at 5:30 every morning, eating breakfast at 6 in the morning. Okay, let me give you another example. For example, I wake up at like 9, I study, I get ready for something that I'm getting ready. It's like 5, I spent my whole day studying for it. At 5, I just lay back in my chair, I open up a game, I play a little games, I just talk to my friends. He comes in, looks at me, and he's like, "Huh, so you didn't study at all? What did you do today?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I studied. This is my like chill time. I'm just taking like an hour or two off. I can just chill for a while." And he's like, "Yeah, sure," and just walks away. Now, he doesn't mean it as a condescending way, or he means it as a comical, as a joke way. But when you think about it, is it? It gives, I can never be sure.
Well,
But
okay.
yeah, when I talk about my dad, I always say the same thing. He always supported. He always said, do whatever you want to do. I'll support." And so far, I guess it worked out good.
Does it sound like it worked out good?
I'm just looking at like an outside perspective. I had it easier compared to a lot of people when you think about it.
Okay. So, I mean, you don't sound happy, Kami.
What do you define as happiness, though? How do you define the happy state? Is it being happy with your life? In what context am I
Sure.
happy?
Are,
Happy with my life?
are you happy?
Not right now.
Okay.
There's a lot of uncertainties.
Have you ever been happy with your life?
I mean, sure, in elementary school and maybe high school. During medical school, I was happy for like 2, 3 years.
What help me understand that? How are you happy in medical school?
I liked what I was doing. I enjoyed going to classes. I enjoyed learning new things. I enjoyed my time in medical school.
Okay. So, but did they name any diseases after you in medical school?
No, not really.
So help me understand that. How could you be happy in medical school and also not be accomplished? You were a student.
Yeah. I mean, it was more like, okay, think about it this way. There's 6 years, and the point to panic, to self-realization comes after the fourth grade. In here, like in my country, medical school is 6 years, and we finish it, and then we go directly into residency. So the first 3 years, I was happy. I didn't even know what I was doing there. I was completely lost. I was like, okay, this class, and then this class. Oh, let me just learn about this a little more. This looks interesting. After fourth grade, you come into the realization of, okay, what's next?
Okay.
I'm gonna end this.
So let me ask you something. So I'm going to use your analogy of climbing a tree. All right?
Mm-hmm.
So for the first couple of years of medical school, you were really looking at looking at the tree at the almost at the level that you were on, or you're looking at the next branch above you, right? You can see like where you're supposed to put your hand. But essentially, you're looking at the level of the tree that you're at. And the dread sets in when after year 4, you looked up and you couldn't see. You could see all the handholds that you've been climbing.
Yeah.
And you were okay like climbing one handhold at a time. You were happy.
Yeah.
And then the moment you look up and you realize, oh crap, like this tree doesn't end. That's when you became unhappy.
Exactly. That's when it hit me,
So
I guess I can say.
I know it sounds kind of weird, but like if you want to be happy, what should you do?
That's the problem I'm having. I cannot figure out what. Should I just keep on climbing? Should I just stop and go down?
Well,
I know how the floor was.
Let me toss something out. How about stop looking up?
So just keep on climbing.
Yeah,
Don't question it that much.
sure. How does that feel?
It feels it makes me uneasy. to not
Okay.
think what's ahead.
Okay. And why is that? Good?
Because it's always been like that. You look at the goal, you have a goal that you have to reach. But I don't see a goal anymore. I see that I see goals, let's say, call it that. I see a lot of goals to achieve, but I don't see an ending of these goals. I've achieved some goals. I look at my CV and I look at myself. I'm like, okay, I did this and this and this. I know that I did these. I'm going up. I'm setting goals still. I'm setting a goal right now for myself to get into a PhD. Next goal is going to be finish that PhD. I'm still looking at the goals. The problem is taking a step back and looking at all that's ahead of me. Now, I feel uneasy without a goal because I don't know what I'm doing then. I don't know where I'm going.
Okay.
It's like shooting my hand up in the air, not knowing if I'm gonna reach that branch.
Can I think for a second, Kami?
Yeah.
Are you proud of yourself?
I am proud of myself.
Help me understand that.
When I think to myself, if I did a good job so far, getting to this point, I did a good job so far. I think to myself, yes, could I have done more? Of course I could have done more. There's always more that I could have done. But so far I did good. I didn't do bad. I finished medical school, I worked a little. I wanted to get in research, so I did some research.
Okay.
And I'm still setting my goals and going there.
Kami, so thank you so much for sharing everything. Anything, I have a couple of thoughts and we can do a little bit more back and forth, but anything that you'd like to add or anything that you feel like needs more explanation or anything that we've talked about that frustrates you?
No, not really. I mean, I can just continue with, like, after you, basically.
Okay. So I think there are a couple of important things here. So I think that the biggest challenge that I see that you face is that a lot of different things are being conflated. So if I tell you, for example, so we know that you've been happy before, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you've been happy before is when you've basically been like oblivious and ignorant to what's going on.
Exactly.
Right? So if I tell you, okay, so if you're unhappy, Kami, then just become oblivious again. Stop looking up. And while that may work sort of, it's a very unsatisfying answer because like how are you going to plan your life if you're just like lost in the moment?
Exactly.
Right? So I think there are a couple of different things that are being conflated, and my sense of this situation is that these things need to be teased apart and kind of worked on individually. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So first thing is, it sounds to me like you're in an early life crisis. Have you heard the phrase midlife crisis?
Yeah, yeah.
What's your understanding of what a midlife crisis is?
Basically, the realization of the age moving forward and then being scared that the younger days are not going to come back.
Yep. And does it sort of make sense that you're kind of in an early life crisis?
Is it like having the midlife crisis a little bit too early?
Yeah, right. So you've been grinding for 19 years, as you put it, and you wake up at the age of 25 and you have accomplishments behind you. And somewhere along the way, you thought that those accomplishments would make you happy. But
Yeah,
you're not happy. In fact, you're terrified.
yeah.
And so like you're not sure. And basically what I think of as an early life crisis or a midlife crisis is you play the game of life with a particular strategy, assuming that that strategy will be successful. And then you hit some point where you realize like, wait a minute, this strategy is not accomplishing what I want. And then you feel terrified because have I been using the wrong strategy and is it too late? Like have I basically screwed up? And then you're really
Exactly.
confused because do I continue using the strategy going forward or do I change my strategy? But if I change my strategy, what if that doesn't work? How do I know what I should do? Because you're telling me, like, what if I spend the next 40 years doing research? And, like, what if that's not enough? What if these other researchers are more brilliant than I am? So, like, does that feel like it fits?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so I think there are 2 or 3 different things to understand. The first is, what is the nature of happiness? The second is how to plan your life. And the third is ego. Okay? So let's start with the third one, ego. So why do human beings want to be remembered? Because they feel insignificant. So I could argue with you if I wanted to. I don't know how useful it would be. But for example, like, I don't think that general practitioners are insignificant. I think you sort of talk about, being remembered because nothing happens after death, whatever. That's totally fine. But, like, I think general practitioners are some of the most impactful and memorable people because there are real human lives that you are altering the course of, this person's life, which in turn is going to alter the course of all of their family members. If you find, like, let's say, like, a shallow depth melanoma in someone where you can do a surgical extraction, never, they never get past stage 1 cancer, you've altered the course of that person's life in a very permanent and meaningful way.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Okay, the problem I have with that one is it's going to be still talking about my ego. It's going to be me being egoist about myself. But the way I look at it is, if I'm not, let's say I diagnose and I treat and I change the course of that person's life. But if it wasn't me, if it was someone else, it would have had the same outcome. Most likely. They would still get diagnosed by someone else. They would still get treated by someone else. My problem here with this one is, what can I do that will set me aside from the herd?
Okay.
What can I accomplish that the other people cannot?
So as expected, I mean, clearly you don't find significance or meaning in that, because if you did, we wouldn't be having this conversation about being a researcher, right? So that makes sense that that doesn't work for you. So that's totally fine. So I'm not going to argue with you about trying to convince you that you're successful. We could go back and forth, right? So for example, some GPs miss things. So if you caught something, like maybe if they saw another GP, like they would have missed it. And then you'll have a counter to that, and we can go back and forth about me trying to convince you that you can be significant as a GP. It's not going to get anywhere. Fair?
Yeah, fair.
Okay. So the first thing to understand is that, a lot of this I think does have to do with ego, but that's not really your fault or anything. But let's just understand a couple of other aspects of ego. So another is in comparison. So the tricky thing that the ego does is that it makes unfair comparisons. So what you're sort of doing is comparing sports skill with one person, video game skill with another person, research accomplishments with another person, and some other, like number one in your class with another person. So what the ego does is it doesn't compare one person to one person. It compares you to the best aspects of a dozen people. So it's creating a situation in which you can never win.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Can I say something about that?
Sure.
The problem with the ego here is it makes you think it's achievable. It makes you think, comparing yourself to other people, it makes you feel like you can do the same thing if you work hard enough. You can do this thing if you work that hard enough.
Well, are you going to be a revolutionary researcher? Are you ever going to win the Nobel Prize, Kami?
That's the problem. I don't know if I can. I don't.
So let's be.
Probability is really low. It's really, really low.
I'm going to be a little bit critical. I mean, not in terms of this nuance of your language. The ego doesn't tell you it's achievable, right? Because if I ask you, can you achieve it? You're like, probably not. The problem with the ego is that it tells you that the insecurity that I feel will be fixed if you achieve.
I see.
That's the problem with the ego. And then what the problem is that it sets up these goals for you that you assume if you win the Nobel Prize that you'll be like content, right? That's what the ego tells you. The problem is that even if you win the Nobel Prize, like the ego is not going to be happy because you'll share it with someone else.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
And the key thing there is that the ego is a consequence of an insecurity. So ego doesn't arise when people are confident. It actually arises when people lack confidence.
Sort of like a defense mechanism.
100%. Right? So that's why I could try to convince you that you have impact on your patients' lives. I'm pretty sure that your patients would agree with me, by the way. But your mind is going to reject that. Because you don't feel that way, right? Like when you save someone's life from cancer, you don't feel that way. You go home after a day's work and you're like, okay, I saved a life today. You sit down to play video games. Your dad walks in the room and shakes his head, jokes about it, and walks out.
Yeah.
And so, like, you don't know how to appreciate your accomplishments.
Okay.
Okay? So that's ego.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, the second thing to understand is that, like, so like, what makes people happy? So this is where there's been a fair amount of research in this, but I think sort of the Eastern traditions, like we're talking sort of like the Hindu tradition, the yogic tradition, the Buddhist tradition, I think they basically got the best answer to this, which we're sort of verifying through science now as we sort of develop these like psychotherapy modalities that are sort of based on some of these principles that help people reduce their suffering and find contentment. So I think there's like some like decent scientific evidence for this kind of stuff. But that essentially being outcome oriented as opposed to action oriented is going to like make you unhappy. The interesting thing is that it won't necessarily affect your performance. So this is where, being happy is essentially about living in the moment. So like, and we sort of know this, right? Because there have been periods of your life where you've been happy. And those are the periods where you were kind of like focused on studying, you were curious about learning, you were enjoying things. It sounds like you were doing okay. But I don't know that being aware of what comes next would have actually made you study more. And research basically shows that like being terrified about the future versus like focusing on the present, it's not like it's not like focusing on the future actually improves your performance or GPA. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think if you want to be happy, what you should do, if you enjoy research, then by all means become a researcher. And if you want to be happy, like really try to just enjoy day to day. Like that's an answer that we sort of have. Now, the downside of that answer is how do you plan your life? Right? If I'm just focusing on the day to day, like how do I like plan it all? And that's where like the tricky thing is planning your life for happiness is not a great idea. You could plan your life for like a career, but the assumption that a particular set of steps will make you happy, that's where people run into trouble. So I'm not suggesting that you don't plan your life, but sort of saying like, okay, if I get an MBA, will it make me happy? I don't think an MBA or an MD or a PhD will in and of itself make you happy. And my simple reasoning for that is that there are people who have MDs who are happy and people who have MDs who are not happy. The difference is that happiness and success like aren't necessarily correlated. I'm sure if you do some kind of like logistic regressional analysis, you're going to find that there's some correlation. But, that's massing a bunch of variables. I don't know how useful that is for an individual person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, correlation is not causation. Yeah.
Right? So I think this is where like you're conflating the one piece of, recommendation I would have for you. And this is sort of a situation where I feel a little bit more confident, like leaning on other things as opposed to asking you a bunch of questions, is because I've worked with a lot of people who are medical students and young doctors and sort of helping them through this kind of stuff. And what I'd say is like, you should start by teasing apart these three things. That making a plan for your life and assuming that a plan for your life is going to make you happy is a mistake. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
Right? And this is where we sort of know that, like, if we look at your life, a particular plan is not actually how you've been happy. In fact, the more that you conflate happiness with planning, the more unhappy you've become and the harder it's been to plan.
Exactly.
So this is the kind of thing where I'd separate those two things out. And by all means, if you want to be a researcher because like you find research like engaging, then by all means do it. But this is also where, anyway, so, okay. So happiness is about living in the present. By all means, plan your life in sort of a strategic and forward sort of thinking measure, but don't assume that a particular plan will make you happy. With me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Next thing, so this is what tangles them up, is the ego. So this is where, like, as long as you feel unhappy and insignificant in here, your mind will try to plan a life of achievement that will fix the insecurity inside. Does that make sense?
Can you give like an example for this one?
Yeah, so do you feel like a fantastic human being, Kami?
No.
How do you feel about yourself?
I have plenty of flaws.
Okay.
I look at my flaws and try to better themselves.
Exactly.
Better myself.
So there you have plenty of flaws, right? That's why you don't feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
So what's one of your flaws? Let's say
There's a lot. I'm
okay,
trying to
so
pick
let's
one.
say one of my flaws is that I'm not a Nobel Prize winning researcher, right?
Yeah.
So the ego, this is an issue of identity, right? So if I identify as a Nobel Prize winning researcher, do you understand that has to do with my identity? It's like an ego thing, right? So like you can identify as a doctor, you can identify as a man, you can identify as a father, you can identify as a researcher, you can identify as a Nobel Prize winning researcher or just a regular researcher. Those are all aspects here of identity. Agreed?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So if one of my flaws and something that makes me unhappy about myself is that I'm not a Nobel Prize winning researcher, what can I do to be happy?
Okay.
I'm asking.
That's the question. Yeah. I mean, going on with what you said, basically living in the moment. Not trying
incorrect.
to look too far ahead.
No. We're asking you what your mind is telling you to do. What is the mind? How do I correct that? If I'm flawed, you gave me the right answer, but I'm looking for the wrong one.
Yeah. Just study and get your Nobel Prize.
Exactly. Right? So now we see how the ego is the root of your plan and your happiness. Because the ego says, oh, I can feel better about myself if I have a Nobel Prize. In order to get okay, so that means that the Nobel Prize will bring me happiness. Now we've attached happiness to your outside outcome. Then what we also do is we see your plan. So that gets reverse engineered into a plan. Oh, so then in order to be happy and win a Nobel Prize, I have to be a researcher. So let's plan the next 40 years and plan on research and grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding. And then we'll get our Nobel Prize and then we'll be happy. And then the ego will be satisfied. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, it does.
But then that's like, why is that hard for you? Because actually you've been happy. And what's really confusing for you is that the moments that you've been happy are not what your ego is telling you to do. Mm-hmm. So now what you're trying to do is correct an ego problem by a particular plan, which you hope will end up with happiness. And that's how the three things are tied together.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I internally think about myself as well. Like, I, let's say, have like crises like this when I'm like sitting in my room by myself thinking about stuff. But then the way I calm myself down is, okay, just remember, you're not going to get into an exam to win the Nobel Prize tomorrow. Right? It's really far ahead. You don't need to think too hard about it. That's how I try to fix the problem, the internal conflict I have of, should I just keep on going or should I just stop here?
Yeah, so I think that internal conflict is because you've got these three different dimensions that are a part of one equation that should each be its own equation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand your point here.
So that's where, like, I'd say very practically, like, you've got to start thinking. So I think a lot of this comes down to ego and what makes it hard for you to feel significant.
Yeah.
right? So like when you do help people, and I'm assuming that your patients like you,
Yeah,
like, are you a good doctor?
I'm a good doctor. Yeah, my patients like me.
Right? So like, why doesn't that help?
It does help, but it doesn't help in the bigger picture in my head. The bigger picture I have in my head.
Yeah. So, and where is that bigger picture coming from?
My ego.
Right?
Yeah, I understand your point. Yeah.
So now the question really becomes like, and I think this is where it's like, dad is a neurosurgeon, I'm just a GP. I mean, who knows if that's really what it is, but we've got to start thinking a little bit about, why did you feel inferior to other people? Because you also told me that you've basically felt this way your entire life, which means that it has nothing to do with your accomplishments, right? So the ego, this is the tricky thing about people who have an ego insecurity is, so the ego tells us, okay, so if I feel insecure and the ego tells us accomplishment will make me feel better, right? That's the assumption. You with me?
Yeah.
And then as I accomplish, do I feel better? No. If you did, then you wouldn't be here. Like you would have been content. Like if an outward accomplishment fixed your ego, then becoming a doctor would have been sufficient.
Yeah.
So despite all of your accomplishments, what does the mind always say? The mind always says, that's not enough. Look, someone is doing better. Look, someone is doing better. Look, someone is doing better. So it's not actually like logic. I mean, it's logical, but it's like selective logic. That no amount of work is going to satisfy the ego, which is the nature of the ego. Because the insecurity was not actually born of a lack of accomplishment. It was born of a feeling of a lack of accomplishment. And no amount of accomplishments will fix that ego.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes,
How do
when
we
did
fix
you
that?
start to feel like you were not good enough, that you needed to be better?
The more I learned, it was just the more I learned, the more I realized, the more I found out that, yeah, I can do this too. I can do this. The
So,
realization of I can do this, it was,
so I think all of those things were reinforcing it, but I would venture that you actually, like, this is like some weird experience that you probably had as a kid, where you're the son of a doctor, right? So this is something that I too am the son of a doctor. So like I'm making assumptions here, but generally speaking, where I grew up, like there was a lot of value placed on accomplishments. So fundamentally, I learned that my value as a human being and my worth as a human being is tied to my accomplishments. And there's a decent chance that that's something that you grew up with too.
yeah.
And so then like, then it actually goes back and starts like, I mean, you're going to have to do a lot of work here, Kami, but I would say like, maybe even working with a therapist or coach or something like that. I mean, you're a doctor, so hopefully you understand the differences. Like if we're talking about something traumatic that reaches a clinical threshold, then you should absolutely see a therapist.
Yeah.
But working through some of this stuff and sort of setting planning and goals and things like that, that's like totally fine with coaching. You can actually try both. But this is the kind of thing where I think you need to do some very serious internal exploration and try to figure out when you started feeling insufficient. And when you started feeling that if I do this thing, then I will feel sufficient.
Can I say something about this?
Sure.
It's going to be really broad, really, I'm looking
Please.
at the surface of it, but what makes a kid happy? Like thinking about it as a kid, what makes a kid happy? If a kid does something good, and if you tell the kid it did something good, for example, let's say I have a child and my child just learned how to ride a bike. What would I do? I would congratulate him and I would present him with a prize. And the prize would make him happy. Accomplishment would make him happy, and the prize would make him happy. He knows that as he's accomplished, he's getting a prize and he's happy. So if I really look internally and like go back, think about it, I might say, okay, looking at other kids being accomplished in things, getting rewards for it, and like seeing them happy with it, being happy with it, and me just watching them from the side is what made it, what made me think, oh, okay, I can do this as well. I can get on this. Why shouldn't I go for the prize?
Okay, yeah.
Why shouldn't I do something that would make me happy at the end point?
I think that makes a lot of sense and is actually sort of precisely the problem. And I think there's more digging to be done here. So let me explain it this way. So that only makes a kid happy if that's what the parents reinforce and teach the child.
Okay.
Right? So if the parents say you only get the prize for accomplishment, then that's exactly what the problem is that you're creating a system where happiness gets conflated with accomplishment. Then the problem is when these kids grow up to be adults, there's no external party that is now rewarding you for accomplishment. So then you end up accomplishing without being happy. Does that make sense? Because you've learned that, if I accomplish, then I'm going to get a prize. But who's giving you prizes now? That's why you want a Nobel Prize. You want someone to give you a prize because that's what you think is going to make you happy. Because accomplishment has been tied with someone externally giving you stuff. The problem is when these kids grow up to be adults, they wind up like you, which is that at this point, no one's awarding me stuff. So even though I'm accomplishing, I don't feel happy. The flip side of it is like also that really there's research on this. Like you could look at Carol Dweck's research, for example, on mindset. She did a lot of this original research. That what you really, if you want to raise a happy kid, what you actually want to do is reward effort, not accomplishment. You want to focus on actions. You want to get them to not look at the top of the tree, but look at the branch that they're climbing on. And the more that you do that, the more happy the kid will be. The more resilient to failure the kid will be.
Okay.
So
I understand. I understand your point here.
So I would even venture that you grew up and you had some situations where you did something that you were proud of, and that someone around you did not validate that accomplishment. In fact, probably what they did is they said that you were really happy, like you ran to your parents and you showed them some piece of artwork, and they looked at your artwork and they said, "What is this? That other kid did better." Does that resonate with you at all?
And it resonates with me a lot, but not through my family, but more like through my educational life.
Sure. Right. So that's
more at school and school accomplishments.
Yeah. Right. So and that's where, that's common. So, and this is the key thing is you've got to go back and reorganize your value system and it's a lot of work, but you've really got to think through this stuff and really start to realize where did I start believing that accomplishment was tied to more than accomplishment. Accomplishment is great. Achieving things is fantastic. But when did your worth as a human being start to get tied to accomplishment? Because when kids really develop confidence, they don't develop confidence through accomplishment. The way that a kid develops confidence is that even if they fail, hopefully some kind of authority figure tells them, "Hey, it's unfortunate that you didn't succeed, and you're still a good kid. I want you to try again."
Okay. I understand. I understand your point perfectly.
What do you think about it? You understand it as one thing.
It is a lot of work.
Yep.
Even in my head, it's a lot of work.
Yep.
Just something to even just figure out myself, even get help if needed. It's definitely a big pile of work.
So you got to be careful. Is your mind looking straight or is it looking up?
That's the question to ask.
Right. So
in times of stress, yeah.
So even now, as you look at how much work it is, your mind may be doing the same thing. You may be looking up and saying, "Oh, if I accomplish this thing, then I will be happy. If I rebuild my value system from scratch, then I will be happy. If I do A, B, C, and D, and I accomplish these things, then I will be happy." And you've got to be careful, Kami, because if you do it that way, it's not going to work. You're just falling into the same trap of the mind again.
A vicious cycle.
Yep.
But I understand.
So it's it's going to be work. But like reasonably, Kami, in my professional experience, I've worked with people for like 6 months to a year, and they're like basically better. Like it doesn't take years. Just like anything else that we do in life, when we really focus on it, we can get a lot done in a very short time.
Okay.
Questions?
Where to even start? I understand your points like perfectly. I will keep them in mind. Even just the question, just conditioning myself to think, okay, am I looking straight or am I looking up, is a good way of coping.
Very good. So
Yeah.
good. So let me try to summarize for you, okay? So the first thing to understand is that if you want to move through this and resolve some of this stuff, is to stop conflating your ego and your personal sense of satisfaction with planning your life and being happy. And to recognize that these three things can actually be separate. Because right now, what your mind is trying to do is solve all three problems with one strategy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
working on your confidence, your sense of, okay, why do I not feel accomplished enough in the first place? To ask yourself very practical questions like, when I save someone's life, why doesn't that help me feel good about myself? Like, that's bizarre, right? So you got to start asking those kinds of questions. That's about ego. You can also do other kinds of practices like meditate and things like that, which will give you a sense and experience of self that is beyond accomplishment. The second thing that you've really got to do is plan your life, but don't plan based on assuming that if I do this 40 years later, I'll be happy. Because if that doesn't work out, and here's the problem with what we call the planning fallacy, which is that we make plans at the beginning. And the beginning is when we have the least amount of information. Ergo, the worst time to make a plan is actually at the beginning. Right?
Okay.
So I think you should, by all means, make a plan. Don't just forget about the future entirely. Like if you want to do research, think about it, focus on your application, build up your application, whatever, do this kind of research thing. If you like this, like whatever. By all means, plan, but don't plan for the sake of like professional success and almost like have it be a compass. Don't really focus on the end, like how do I win a Nobel Prize? Really focus a little bit more on like playing a game of chess where it's like, okay, what's the next best move? You can't plan out how to win a chess game, but at any given moment, you can look at a lot of possibilities and you can try to make the next best move. And if you want to like apply for a PhD and start doing research, then by all means, apply for a PhD and start doing research and be like calculating about it and stuff like that. The third thing is you need to do a serious exploration on what is happiness and what makes me happy and what makes me unhappy. And like be scientific about it, right? You want to be a researcher. So when if you spend a day working on your application, does that make you happy? When you receive an acceptance somewhere, does that make you happy? Is to really try to understand, okay, like what is the actual origin of happiness? And once you figure out what the formula of happiness is, then you can start crafting your life towards it.
Okay. I have two questions. Can I really ask them fast? Okay. First of all, the patient part. When treating a patient, going back home, the problem with that one I have is working as a doctor. I'm sure you can, think about it as well, but living at a house, my mom is a nurse also, living in a house where everyone is a health care worker, working on people's health, I'm not saying lives, working on people's health, bettering people's health, is something really normalized throughout my life. Even going to work right now, I look at my patients, I care for them, I understand them, I try to help them in every possible way, whatever I do. But at the end of the day, unless I'm holding the heart with my hand and just pumping the blood myself, it feels like normal. It feels like a normal part of my life. I don't feel, oh, this is something different that I see. This is something different that I do. It's something my family has been doing. It's something that I am doing right now. we
Yeah.
provided healthcare, and we're still doing it.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to put on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good thought. You had another one, or you want me to address that one first?
Yeah, address that one first, please. Yeah.
So I think one of the most, so this is like one of the problems that actually like kids who are kind of gifted run into, or kids who grow up in situations where exceptional is normal. Right? So like you get a weird value system where what you're doing is considered run of the mill. And so like that's something to just kind of think about, but this is also where like even people who are not exceptional or like who don't grow up in like, you know, households with very high expectations, they also have to do this as well. That even if I'm a carpenter or a plumber or a doctor, this idea that doing a particular task will make me happy or make me feel accomplished, that's what we sort of learn, right? So if we like interpret what you're saying, what it sort of means is that being a plumber, being a carpenter, or being a doctor, finding the value and appreciation in that is actually intrinsic. And so what I'm hearing you say actually aligns perfectly with what we're talking about, which is that accomplishment does not automatically equate happiness. And something about the value system that you grew up in did not teach you to appreciate what you actually do. So now this is where you have a personal journey to discover whether you can actually appreciate what you do. Right? So how does it feel to sit with a patient? How does it feel to not sit with a patient? You may discover that it actually feels completely insignificant. And that's where, like, if that's what your internal compass is telling you, I'd spend some time kind of working on it, but then maybe you need to do research.
I mean, it doesn't feel insignificant. It doesn't feel extraordinary as well, sitting with a patient. It feels normal.
Yeah. And this is kind of my experience of working with people is that most of the happiness in life doesn't come from extraordinary. It comes from normal. And this is where we've got research on mindfulness, right? Where it's like when I mindfully eat a piece of cake, my enjoyment and happiness and contentment over the piece of cake will increase. So to the enlightened person, every normal experience is extraordinary. That's what it means to be enlightened. And these are people who have moved away from suffering and moved towards contentment. So this is it's a long path, Kami, but I think it's important for you to walk it.
Okay. I understand it.
Next question. You had two.
You kind of answered my second question as well with the explanation there.
Okay.
Okay, one more question, one last one. You talked about someone, Carol. I wanted to write the name down about
Carol
the
Dweck.
book on Carol Dweck. Okay, thank you.
So she wrote a book called Mindset, which is like for popular consumption. Depending on whether you have access to research papers and stuff, you can just look up her bibliography. But there's a book. And then we also touch on a lot of this stuff. I mean, have you seen Dr. K's guide?
I actually haven't.
So I would.
I actually haven't. Yeah.
You may get. I don't know if people who call in get access to it or not. I'm not quite sure, but you may actually want to check that out because I think there's a lot of stuff in there that will be, was made for people like you.
Okay.
So understanding purpose, understanding happiness. Even we talk in the recent in the guide that's coming out. We talk a lot about mindset, and we lean on Carol Dweck's work and like how to change from this perspective of accomplishing brings me happiness to focusing on the action brings me happiness.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
I'll definitely check into it.
Good luck to you, Conrad.
Can I ask one professional question?
Sure.
What do you think about cultural psychiatry, the transcultural psychiatry, in the gaming industry, the people in gaming?
I don't understand the question.
Okay, it's a really long question. Maybe I'll just email you about it later.
I mean, you can ask it, but if it's a really long question that you're shortening to seven words, I think it's going to be hard for me to answer it.
Yeah. Okay, I'll start it this way. Do you know about cultural psychiatry, the transcultural psychiatry? McGill works on it.
So I'm familiar that psychiatry has a cultural component.
Exactly. It's about that. Do you know anyone who works on cultural aspects of psychiatry in the gaming culture? Because like now
Like
we're moving towards
the culture of gaming, or different cultures combining in gaming?
culture of gaming.
Like, what is gamer culture?
Exactly. And the mental health
I mean, so
of the gamer.
I mean, that's a lot of the work that we're actually trying to do, because and
That's
I
why
mean,
I wanted to ask you about it.
more and more people are doing it. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Okay.
You can reach out to Tech Teller with your question, and then we can forward it to our research director and see if they know anything.
Okay. Thank you.
Good luck with that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's
All
been weird looking into myself.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when you first start doing it, but
Yeah.
good luck to you, Kami. I really mean it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I wish you the very best as well.
Take care, man.
Take care.
Okay. So, and that lasted longer than expected. So I think once again, we're going to have to skip meditation, which we're going to have to do better about time management. But couple of things to just recap, okay? So the first thing is that sometimes we go looking for happiness. And either through a combination of how we're raised or, cultural influences, we sort of assume that accomplishing a particular thing will make us happy. And that belief isn't entirely wrong, right? There's a reason we believe it. It's either through some kind of cultural influence or the way that we're raised by our family, or even some of our own early experiences. The problem is that once we start to tie a particular accomplishment to happiness, what that sort of means for us is that we have to plan a particular kind of life to be happy. We start to tell ourselves like, okay, I have to go to this school, or I have to become a doctor, or I have to accomplish this, or I have to win a Nobel Prize, or I have to be promoted. And we start tying our happiness to particular worldly accomplishments. When you do this, sometimes it can be very helpful because you're going to work really hard because you assume that something is going to make you happy. But what happens oftentimes is that when you start living a life where external accomplishment is how you're chasing happiness, you tend to run into one of two things, either an early life crisis or a midlife crisis. Despite a lot of accomplishment, your mind continually tells you things like, oh, but look, that person is doing better, that person is doing better, that person is doing better. And despite all of your accomplishments, it feels like it's never enough, right? There's always more to do. There's a higher mountain to climb. There's the next mountain and the next mountain and the next mountain. And then what happens is there's this like critical conflict in our mind between the part of our mind that was learned that if I accomplish particular things, I'll be happy, and the growing part of our mind that despite accomplishing these things, I'm still not happy. And when these two things butt in your head, this is when you get a life crisis. And what I'm seeing is, especially in people who are accomplished, gifted, etc., this life crisis is not happening as a midlife crisis. It's happening as an early life crisis. And the crux of this life crisis is, hey, I've been playing the game of life with this particular strategy because I thought it would succeed. And what I'm discovering is, despite succeeding, it's not working. And then we panic. Because what do we do next? Do we keep doing this strategy? Do we just assume that if I keep grinding for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, I'll succeed? Or do we change our strategy? Do we say, oh my God, this did not work, so we have to find some way new? And even if we assume that, that's terrifying. Because does this mean that I've screwed up? Does this mean that since I've been playing with the wrong strategy, that my life is not recoverable and that I'm doomed to unhappiness? Or even there's anxiety. How do I find out which is the right strategy? I've wasted 10 years of my life with this strategy. How do I make sure that I don't waste the next 10 years? How do I find the right strategy? This is the crisis. And so oftentimes what ends up happening is that we conflate a lot of different things. Our ego gets conflated with planning for the future, gets conflated with happiness. If a particular plan for the future leads us to happiness, And we crave happiness because we feel insufficient. Oh, I'm not good enough. What do I need to be what do I need to do to feel good enough? I need to win a Nobel Prize. How do I win a Nobel Prize? Let's adopt this plan. And so ego drives your life plan, or an insecurity or a feeling of not being enough creates a life plan with the end goal of being happiness. And now we've combined all three of these things. But there's actually a fair amount of research that shows us that these three things are actually very separate. Resolving an insecurity can sometimes be done through psychotherapy. You don't have to live a particular life or win a Nobel Prize. You can just go see a therapist and they'll help you work through your insecurities. Planning a particular life doesn't necessarily lead to happiness. And there's even been research on this, that we know that there are certain principles of happiness, like living in the present. It's not that winning a Nobel Prize will necessarily make you happy. And this is what we sort of see in people who are very, very accomplished, is they think, okay, getting promoted, becoming VP will make me happy. Still not happy. Senior VP will make me happy. Still not happy. Junior partner will make me happy. Still not happy. Senior partner will make me happy. Still not happy. So we go on accomplishing, and we're not happy at all. So the key thing, if you're kind of in this situation, is to tease these three things apart and dive into each one. And don't plan a life to fix an internal insecurity, because that's the strategy that's wrong. Is assuming that this internal dissatisfaction that I have will be fixed by someone handing me a piece of paper, or by getting a corner office, or by driving a fancy car. And it's when we tangle all these three things together, which is exactly what our ego does, right? It says, I don't feel good enough, therefore accomplish more. When you accomplish more, you'll feel good enough. How do we accomplish? We have to devote our life to doing this kind of thing. And so when I work with people like this is where really teasing apart these three things is really, really important, and working on them kind of individually. And as you do that, hopefully you'll resolve your insecurity. You'll start to discover the nature of happiness and be happier day to day, and you will actually be more accomplished in life. Okay, so yeah, I need to do some stretching, but we unfortunately have to run because we're really at time. So hopefully that was helpful for y'all. I know we're spending a little bit longer on call-ins, which I'm going to have to really think about. So let me actually ask y'all real quick two questions. One is, who are we going to raid? And secondly is, how do y'all feel about the length of the call-ins? Do y'all think that we should go a little bit faster and try to squeeze in one more person? Or do you think that sort of spending like 45 minutes on each person is good enough? Okay. Okay, interesting. Oh, we're not go slower. What about go faster? Okay, but most people are saying this is good. Okay, quality is good. Man, I love this community. Yeah, I don't know if y'all noticed, but we do stream longer. My biggest concern is that we've skipped meditation so much over the last couple months because I've been sick. We run long. But I'm so glad that in a world of like shortening attention span, we have a community that is like actually open to some depth. I miss meditation too. We're gonna have to think about that. We have not stopped talking to streamers. We just do both. I think it's about balance. A lot of times people will think like, have you all stopped doing this? My sense is that, I don't know if this kind of makes sense, but for a long time we were just interviewing streamers, right? Or like majority streamers. And so we started out by just interviewing people from our community. Then we started interviewing a lot of streamers, and then people were like, why are you just interviewing streamers? And so then we're like, okay, well, let's interview community members again. And then, so it's not that we're stopping anything. It's just, there's a lot of stuff to do, right? There's just like There's too much. We could interview streamers. We could interview community members. We could do long interviews. We can do short interviews. We can do Reddit posts. If we do Reddit posts, like things are more like digestible, right? In a sense, maybe more applicable. So we're just trying to find a good balance, honestly. What about starting with meditation? So that's common, but okay, y'all want to raid Dyrus, League of Legends? Or Apex Legends? Sure, let's raid Dyrus. So we'll see y'all. Actually, I think we're streaming tomorrow. Stay tuned to our Twitter. I think we're streaming a little bit more this week. So we'll see y'all maybe tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure. All right? Take care, everybody. Have a nice day.